Chapter 717. To the north of Central State City, there was a mountain range with layers upon layers of rocks. The mountain range was over 1,000 miles wide and the terrain was very complex. There were many fierce beasts and there was not a single safe path yet. Even the most experienced mercenary would find it hard to pass through, not to mention tens of thousands of ground troops. It was because there was a natural barrier separating Central State and the north that no one thought the warhounds could attack from the north. At this moment, on a mountain range less than 100 miles from Central State, there was a dense amount of vultures from the middle of the mountain to the peak. The black flag of the warhounds fluttered in the wind and the sharp weapons of the tens of thousands of soldiers shined with a cold glow. The 4 warhounds chiefs asked, "It's about time, let's begin." The Central State Army should already be fighting with the warhounds at the 4 States Lake. The Central State Army was busy chasing the warhounds, so it was impossible for them to return. This was a good chance to launch a surprise attack on Central State. But for some unknown reason, the Fang King did not give the order and was thinking about something with a frown. What is the Fang King waiting for? As long as we take Central State, the southern summer country will belong to the warhounds and we will have 200 million slaves. The Fang King looked in the direction of Central State City in the distance. Central State has already sent half of their troops to the 4 States Lake. This means that the other side's commander has already calculated our deployment. I'm afraid Central State City has already prepared for a surprise attack. So what if they calculated it? The other side is Dongfang gone. If it was that easy to plot against, how could he defend the southern summer country for several decades? This person is hard to defeat with military tactics, so we can only use absolute strength. The warhounds chiefs were not surprised and they didn't care at all. This is a good chance for us. They want to take care of both sides, but they will lose both sides. The southern summer country's battle strength is weak. With the 30,000 vulture cavalry carrying 40,000 elites, there will be 70,000-80,000 people descending from the sky. The warhounds have more than enough strength to fight 1 against 3. After we destroy the morale of Central State City, the main army will come ashore and take over the city, conquering the southern summer country in one fell swoop. The confidence of the chiefs did not come from nowhere. The difference in strength between the warhounds and the southern summer country was too large. The warhounds were fierce by nature, so even if they fought 1 against 3, the warhounds' warriors had a high chance of winning. Not to mention the fact that the warhounds' soldiers were all elites, as well as the true spirit realm chiefs led by the Fang King. So what if Central State had 200,000 soldiers? They were all cavalry from the north, so they couldn't form a strong enough defense. Central State was the center of the southern summer country, so there was no danger in all directions. This could not compare to the imperial city that had been under the warhounds' iron hooves for several hundred years. There was no other choice. They could only fight with all their strength. The Fang King decided to take a risk this time. He personally rode on a vulture beast king and rose into the sky. The order was quickly passed down. 30,000 vultures entered battle mode. Each vulture beast carried 2 or 3 elite warriors as they rose into the air. Attack! The 30,000 strong vultures were like a dark cloud, covering the sky as they charged at Central State City. Central State City had already prepared their defenses at this time. All the citizens had been evacuated home and the southern summer country's army was spread out on the streets, ready to attack at any time. Dang! Dang! An ear-piercing alarm rang out. Dongfang Gan held the king's sword as he personally came to the command tower. The enemy is attacking from the north. There are around 30,000 of them. Archery camp, prepare to meet them. As expected. The Eagle Burial Kingdom sent more reinforcements. This number was double what Dongfang Gan had imagined, but it wasn't to the point where they couldn't deal with it. Under Dongfang Gan's command, 10,000 archers shot out. The arrows were like locusts, flying out of Central State City. Each arrow was infused with powerful spirit energy, flying over 1,000 meters, with an effective killing range of around 500 meters. The Fang King was also an experienced commander, so he had expected Central State to resist. When he heard the sounds of bowstrings being released, the Fang King raised his hand and the entire army changed directions. They passed through the dense rain of arrows and charged at Central State once again. The first wave of arrows was the strongest whether it was in terms of uniformity or strength, but the second wave was clearly weaker. The Vulture Knights charged down at full speed, charging through the rain of arrows. Passing through the roofs of Central State City, large amounts of Warhounds elites jumped off the vultures with scimitars, falling into Central State City like rain. The 30,000 Vulture Knights were a strong battle strength, and without the southern summer country's aerial forces, it was enough to easily defeat 100,000 storm cavalry. Not to mention there were 30 to 40,000 airborne soldiers. These soldiers that jumped down from the vultures were all very strong existences. They were experts picked out of 10 in the Warhound's army. Kill all humans. Kill, kill. Central State did not have any aerial forces, so the Vulture Knights could run amok. Just the archers could not stop them. The speed, and power of the arrows could not pose a threat to the vultures. When the Warhound's elites moved through the streets like agile spiders, charging at the southern summer soldiers like hungry wolves. Dongfang Gan saw that the enemies had already entered and immediately gave the order, open fire. The southern summer army had already been waiting for this order. Meng Yingying held the source energy submachine gun in both hands as she fired at a group of Warhound's soldiers coming from the corner of the street. The dense light bullets instantly caused several dozen casualties. Go die, you damn Warhounds bastards. Nangong Yun took out a large fellow that was several times longer than a normal source energy submachine gun. The gun barrel had 3 openings and there were 8 large magazines connected to the gun body. Each large source energy magazine could shoot at least 30-40 rounds of source energy bullets, which meant that this special gun had a high capacity of around 300 rounds. Hung, hung, hung. The special gun let out a wild beast-like roar. The 3 barrels poured out large amounts of source energy bullets like a storm. When Nangong Yun swept it across the sky, several Vulture Knights were instantly torn to pieces by the terrifying strength. Ha ha ha, this is so fucking satisfying. Boss, this weapon is practically made for me. Nangong Yun turned her body and the 3 barrels spat out flames. I'll let you have a taste of Miracle Commerce's strength. This was a special heavy firearm made by Chu Tian. The materials used were leftover materials from the source energy cannons, so the gun had a high resistance. Even if it was fired at a high speed, the barrel would not easily explode. This heavy firearm's firepower was 3-4 times stronger than the submachine gun and was named the Storm Rifle. There was only one in Miracle Commerce and it was used by Nangong Yun to have fun with. Open fire. Sweep away the Warhound's vermin. Meng Yingying and Nangong Yun had only opened the curtains. The Southern Summer Army had been hiding their strength to numb their opponents. When the Warhounds began their attack, the Southern Summer Army did not need to hold back anymore. Countless source energy guns began to fire at the same time. These source energy guns did not have as long range as the crossbows, but they had a terrifying destructive might in the short to medium range. Whether it was their power or firing speed, they could not be compared. In the Imperial City battle, 2,000 submachine guns had caused the 20,000 Vulture cavalry to flee like rats, suffering heavy casualties. Now the Central State Army had over 10,000 source energy submachine guns and several tens of thousands of source energy pistols. Although they did not have any air-to-air resistance, the scale and quantity could not be compared to the past. Dongfang Gan's formation was airtight. The Warhound's Vulture cavalry were like a pit of fire, instantly suffering an unbelievable number of casualties. The Warhound's chiefs were stunned seeing this. What was going on? Since when did these humans have so many strange weapons in their hands? The Fang King's eyes lit up. As expected, this kind of weapon could be quickly produced and the material cost was very low, allowing them to produce this many in a short period of time. If the Warhounds delayed their attack by 3-5 months, perhaps the Eagle Burial Kingdom would personally send their troops. They would need to pay a large price to capture the southern summer country. This was great. If they could obtain this technology for the Eagle Burial Kingdom to use, it would be worth 10 Warhounds kingdoms. Go, full force attack. The 4 true Spirit Realm Warhounds chiefs made their move. The 4 true Spirit Realm experts each had the strength of 1,000 cavalry, and the 4 of them attacking together did not lose to 10,000 cavalry. They instantly tore apart the southern summer defenses and caused quite a bit of casualties to the southern summer country. Humph, the spirit beasts are acting fierce, watch me deal with them. Vivian wanted to make a move. Wait a minute. Meng Yingying suddenly called out to her, now is not the time, your target is the other side's Fang King. Vivian said through gritted teeth, these fellows are too hateful, they simply can't be tolerated. Don't be anxious, we'll give them a taste. Nan Gongyun put away the exaggerated storm rifle and took out the source energy cannon. Meng Yingying loaded the source energy cannon and the 2 of them aimed the cannons at the true spirit cultivators flying in the sky. Fire. Hong. In the heaven-shaking explosion. That white light was even more dazzling than the sun as it instantly tore through the sky. It flew through the sky and hit a Warhound's chief, instantly vaporizing most of the chief's body. That white shockwave did not decrease as it flew through the sky, destroying several vulture knights in a straight line. This was the might of the source energy cannon. Dongfang Gan was completely shocked. Chu Tian had described the source energy cannon before, saying that it was several hundred times stronger than normal source energy pistols. Dongfang Gan already knew that the source energy cannon was not weak, but he never thought it would be this strong. This was simply shocking. It wasn't just Dongfang Gan who was shocked. When everyone felt the bone-chilling destructive might of the source energy cannon, they couldn't help feeling their souls tremble. This thing was just too strong and too terrifying. The Fang King's face turned blue. Was he still underestimating the southern summer humans? But if the humans had this kind of weapon, why didn't they use it in Imperial City? How many of these weapons did the southern summer country have? If there were enough of them, they would be able to equip the fleet. The Warhound's army on the 4 states lake would be in danger. The cost of the source energy cannon was very high. Miracle Commerce had used the treasury's resources, but they could barely make 4 of them. Of course they couldn't equip the entire army, but when 2 armies faced each other, just 1 or 2 of these weapons would be enough to deter an army of 10,000. Continue firing. Nan Gongyun and Meng Yingying continued firing. The terrifying explosions of the source energy cannons echoed through the sky. Because the enemy true spirit experts were already on guard, it was not easy to kill them. However, it was enough to kill large amounts of the enemy vulture knights, dealing a destructive blow to their morale. The Fang King roared out, don't panic, there are only 2 of these weapons. Whoever kills them for me, these 2 weapons will belong to them. The Warhound's warriors were filled with excitement. Who didn't want a weapon that could instantly kill a true spirit expert? There would be brave men with a large reward. The 3 Warhounds chiefs personally moved out, leading the Vulture Knights to attack Meng Yingying's group. Chapter 718. The young Miss Guess was right. The Barbarian's Calamity was a masterpiece directed by Chu Tian. Actually, when he first came to Central State, Chu Tian had been secretly monitoring this special power. It wasn't that Chu Tian was afraid of the barbarians, rather Chu Tian was very interested in the barbarians. The barbarians were different from the weak humans. The barbarians were born with copper skin and iron bones. Most of the barbarians did not have the habit of cultivating because the barbarians' physical strength was very strong. It was around 10 times that of a grown man, around 5 times that of the leopard tribe spirit beasts and the wolf tribe spirit beasts. Even when compared to the tiger tribe spirit beasts and bear tribe spirit beasts, they were still 1 or 2 times stronger. The barbarians had terrifying strength. Even if they did not cultivate, they were not inferior to the elite southern summer soldiers. This was why the Western Marquis had not completely exterminated the barbarians after occupying southern state for so long. Rather, he had suffered losses at the hands of the barbarians and had no choice but to compromise. In Chu Tian's eyes, the millions of barbarians living in southern state could be a ticking time bomb or a gold mine. What did Chu Tian lack the most? Was it resources? Was it money or fame? No, he lacked soldiers. These barbarians were a group of natural soldiers. As long as he taught them a bit, they would immediately become a strong army. In the beginning, Chu Tian did not plan on using dirty tricks and just wanted to slowly recruit them. Who would have thought that he would receive a report that the barbarian tribes were storing food, as if they were going to leave southern state? How could this be? Once the barbarians left southern state and entered the southern forest, not only would it be hard for Chu Tian to use them, they would also be a large hindrance to miracle commerce in the future. This was a barbarian force of over 1 million people. If they fought openly, unless they gathered together, Chu Tian would not care about them at all. But if they hid in the deep mountains and forests, it would be 10 times more troublesome for Chu Tian than if they started a rebellion in southern state. This was because Chu Tian had to pass through the south. If there were over 1 million bandits on this road, the consequences could be imagined. This kind of thing could not happen. Therefore, Chu Tian sent Nangong Yun to destroy the barbarians with the excuse of rescuing the hostages, destroying the barbarians' hard work storing supplies, making them lose the ability to run. This was enough to display miracle commerce's strength, but it did not kill too many barbarians. It made these barbarians fear Chu Tian and miracle commerce from the bottom of their hearts. Because the barbarians did not dare fight miracle commerce and adding in the fact that their supplies were destroyed, they did not do anything wrong. They could only surrender to miracle commerce, hoping that miracle commerce would be merciful and let them live. Chu Tian said to Dongfang Haoren, "Gather the surrendering barbarians in the valley and surround it with 100,000 cavalry. Don't let them run." Yes. Dongfang Haoren immediately rode off. An entire 200,000 strong barbarian youths were brought to the valley and the southern summer country's 100,000 cavalry were stationed on the high ground. The barbarians were very afraid seeing this. These southern summer elite cavalry were very strong and if the barbarians dared to rebel, the 100,000 cavalry would charge down from the high ground and all the barbarians would be finished. These barbarians were afraid and the barbarians left in the tribe were even more afraid. Because the youths had all been taken away, the ones left in the tribe were all old and weak, so they did not have any ability to resist. Not to mention that the tribe had already been destroyed. Being in the ruins, they could not sit still at this moment. The barbarians anxiously shouted, "We want to see the country guarding ruler." Bang! A source energy cannon fired. That fierce energy flattened a small hill in front of the barbarians. The barbarians were stunned when they saw this. Miracle commerce had an even more fierce weapon. If this thing was shot at a crowded area, the number of casualties would be in the hundreds. "All of you shut up for me." Dongfang Haoren was wearing a set of shining armor and was currently riding a divine blue colt, running around the valley. He had the style of a great general and there was no expression on his square face at all. "The country guarding ruler is investigating the matter of the barbarians attacking the caravan, so you are all suspects. Just stay here and after this matter is over, the country guarding ruler will deal with you." Injustice. Injustice. This must have been done by the Black Rhino tribe. Nonsense. Our Black Rhino tribe hasn't done anything in half a month, so it must have been done by the Iron Bull tribe. I saw them bring a team out a few days ago. Fuck. Don't slander us, we only went out to hunt. The barbarians quickly blamed each other. With their simple minds, they never would have thought that this entire matter was directed by Chu Tian and they were all victims. The barbarians did not believe that miracle commerce would do such a senseless thing because with miracle commerce's strength, it wasn't hard for them to destroy the barbarians, so why would they do such a thing? The more the barbarians argued, the fiercer they became. In the end, they all began to fight in the valley. There were waves of people and heads were bleeding, looking very intense. Hung, hung, hung. Several small hills were crushed. Dongfang Haoren raised the loudspeaker and shouted, "Whoever dares cause trouble will be killed." The barbarians immediately became obedient. "We'll all surrender. We ask the country guarding ruler for mercy." Chu Tian was sitting on the high ground drinking tea. He looked over the strong barbarians and nodded in satisfaction. As long as they were trained, they would immediately become good soldiers. This was truly the heavens helping him. These big fools are quite pitiful. Meng Yingying saw the barbarians crying out in fear and hunger in the valley and couldn't help feeling compassion. "Our goal has been achieved and they've already obediently surrendered, so let's just let them go." Chu Tian shook his head. "The barbarians are a rude, untrustworthy, and unreasonable race. If we want to deal with these fellows, we can only give them a deep lesson. Right now, it's not the right time yet. Look at how fierce they are. Although they say they want to surrender, once we let them go, I guarantee that most of them will escape in less than a night. Then what do we do? Let's hang them out for a week until they can't run anymore." Meng Yingying felt that doing this was a bit cruel. What if they riot from hunger? Chu Tian laughed and said, "The barbarians are afraid of the strong and they've already shown their strength, so they won't dare act rashly. Not to mention, I didn't say we were going to kill them. As long as we don't give them hope, they will wait." Meng Yingying gave a sigh. "Stupid barbarians, it's not that I don't want to help you, but who told you to be targeted by Chu Tian? It would be strange if you didn't have bad luck." He did what he said. Chu Tian trapped the barbarians for 7 days and 7 nights without food or water, only eating grass and drinking rain. After 7 days, the barbarians were all flattened from starvation, looking like a large group of refugees. When the barbarians' bodies and minds were about to collapse, suddenly, the cavalry all retreated. Dongfang Haoren rode out on a large horse and announced, "I have good news to tell you. The bandits that attacked Miracle Commerce have been caught." The barbarians were filled with excitement. They were finally caught. These bandits came from the southern forest and are not locals of southern state. The people have already been saved, so this matter has nothing to do with you all. The country guarding ruler has already given the order to let you all leave. The barbarians were filled with joy. It had finally come to an end. The cavalry stationed on the high ground all retreated. The Southern Summer Army seemed like they were preparing to leave, leaving behind a group of stunned barbarians. "Wait a minute." Several old chiefs quickly chased after them. "What's the matter?" "General, our tribe has been destroyed and we don't have any food left." Several old chiefs said with faces filled with sorrow, "The clansmen are starving and we can't move at all." Dongfang Haoren knit his brows. "What does your barbarian life and death have to do with the southern summer country? You have to know that you have done many evil deeds. The country guarding ruler not killing you is already a great kindness." The barbarians began to plead, "We have already surrendered to the country guarding ruler, please give us a way out." "I can't make this decision." Dongfang Haoren said, "I have to go back and ask the country guarding ruler." "Thank you, General, thank you, General." Dongfang Haoren didn't leave for long before he returned. The barbarians did not leave at all because they didn't have any strength left. "The ruler's letter is here." Dongfang Haoren raised a scroll high up in the air. The barbarians all kneeled down to receive the country guarding ruler's letter. Dongfang Haoren loudly read it out. The content of this ruler's letter was, "The barbarians have suffered heavy losses this time, but they are not worthy of sympathy. Who told the barbarians to kill and plunder, committing all sorts of crimes? But in consideration of the heavens' benevolence, this ruler will give you a path of survival. For the long-term peace of southern state and for the prosperity of the southern summer country, Miracle Commerce has decided to invest in an old city abandoned by humans 50 years ago. With this city as the center, the area within 300 miles will become the barbarians' autonomous region, allowing the barbarians to live there. In order to ensure that the barbarians would not return to their old ways, Miracle Commerce will invest a large amount of money. Other than giving out relief rations to ensure that the barbarians would not starve to death, they will also develop mines in the autonomous region. At the same time, they will build large amounts of factories to provide for the barbarians." The ruler's letter. The barbarians were filled with excitement. The country-guarding ruler wanted to build a city for the barbarians. What kind of boldness and bearing was this? The barbarians and humans rejected each other and living together was impossible, so the country-guarding ruler wanted to build a barbarian autonomous region. They would provide relief rations in the beginning and work for the barbarians in the later stages, so they would no longer be bandits. The barbarians were a bit confused about this. They didn't know if they could adapt to this kind of life, but did they have a choice? The barbarians no longer had any tribes and they didn't have any conditions to leave with their current situation, so they could only give it a try. The tribe chiefs discussed it and decided to bring their people to the barbarians' autonomous region to take a look. When they arrived at the barbarians' autonomous region, each barbarian was stunned by the scene in front of them. This old city was very old, but it looked very large. Not only were the walls complete, the houses had been repaired, and there were many temporary tents. Beast carriages entered the old city one after another. Every beast carriage was filled with fruits, wine, and meat. When these starving barbarians smelled the delicious meat and wine, the last bit of worry in their hearts collapsed. They immediately accepted the country-guarding ruler's proposal and swore their loyalty to the country-guarding ruler. Then they charged into their new home with a roar. Chu Tian was very generous. Miracle Commerce had already sent large amounts of food, enough for these barbarians to not starve to death for a while. The other hesitant and suspicious barbarians found out that the first barbarians were already eating and drinking, so how could they sit still? The autonomous region was managed by the barbarians themselves. They wouldn't be controlled by humans, they could eat their fill, and live a good life, so who wouldn't be willing? In just a few days, the abandoned city became very lively. The barbarian autonomous region's population kept increasing and most of the barbarians had come. This time was different from being forced to surrender to save their lives, the barbarians were willing to surrender. When Chu Tian saw the situation stabilize, he gave out simple laws to the barbarians' autonomous region. Then he used the cavalry to enforce military control over the barbarian city, completely controlling them. Chapter 719. The Warhound's chiefs were attacking Miracle Commerce, so Dongfang Gan could not just sit back and do nothing. His source spirit turned into a large bow covered in blood runes and wild spirit energy was poured into the bowstring, turning it into 3 arrows. They saw him draw the bow and suddenly shoot them into the sky. The 3 arrows flew into the sky and turned into 3 giant spears. They were like meteorites falling from the sky as they charged at the 3 chiefs with an incomparably strong might. This power. It was without a doubt Dongfang Gan. Dongfang Gan was an old opponent of the Warhound's plains, so none of the Warhound's chiefs dared to look down on him. When the 3 of them saw Dongfang Gan's sudden attack, they immediately joined hands to create a giant energy barrier. 3 giant spear-like arrows slammed into the barrier, creating the sound of glass shattering. The Fang King locked onto Dongfang Gan's position and gave a cold snort. He pulled out the golden drum and stomped his feet, flying into the sky. He was like a giant bird spreading its wings, as if it was Mount Tai. "My king, be careful." The 2 personal guards did not have time to release their source spirits. The purple gold thunder god drum released 2 bolts of lightning that hit their bodies. Like 2 pieces of paper being torn apart, the 2 personal guards were turned to ashes. The Fang King did not stop at all. That golden drum was already filled with a terrifying thunder energy and it released an even more resplendent glow. When it flew at Dongfang Gan, tens of thousands of bolts of lightning shot out in all directions, just like a giant spider web. Dongfang Gan had never fought with the Fang King before, but from the pressure he felt, this person's cultivation was not below his, it was even higher. That longbow turned into a set of armor and Dongfang Gan took out a sword filled with a majestic aura, it was the Southern Summer King's sword. This sword was not just the symbol of the Southern Summer King, it was also an incomparably powerful divine weapon. Dongfang Gan released his full strength to block the Fang King's shocking attack. Dang! When the golden drum hit the king's sword, the ground under the 2 sovereign kings' feet caved in by half a foot, and a shallow pit appeared in a radius of 30 meters. The surrounding buildings were shattered, and the large and small stones, along with the people, were moved dozens of meters away by the irresistible force. There seemed to be a strong energy field surrounding the two of them. This energy field was unimaginably strong. Large amounts of spirit energy collided with each other, even creating flames and lightning. Almost everything that was covered in this energy field was crushed by the strong spirit energy storm. The Fang King's attack was incomparably wild and Dongfang Gan's momentum was much weaker, but Dongfang Gan's armament source spirit had already turned into a defensive state, so it could absorb most of the damage. This attack seemed to be evenly matched. But both sides did not move their weapons and continued to wrestle with each other. Ha, ha, ha. Southern Summer's Dongfang Gan is only this strong. It was unknown what secret technique the Fang King used, but the veins on his body suddenly bulged and the strength he released became stronger. Dongfang Gan's feet continued to sink and the hole in the ground began to increase. Thunder God! Give me strength! A bolt of heavenly lightning fell from the sky and landed on the golden drum, increasing the might of this weapon by over half. Dongfang Gan found it hard to resist this sudden increase in strength. Large amounts of lightning continued to fall on Dongfang Gan's body and the armor formed by the armament source spirit was like it was being wildly pounded by a boxer, with large amounts of holes appearing on it. Of course, Dongfang Gan was unwilling to lose, so he also began to resist. The runes on the surface of the king's sword were all undone, and a wave of energy sealed within the king's sword burst out, instantly creating a shocking amount of extremely sharp sword chi. The Fang King did not have any defenses, and a large amount of bloody mist instantly erupted from his body. There were dozens of wounds crisscrossing across his body. What difference is there between these wounds and a small knife wound? The Fang King's right hand held the golden drum and his left hand condensed a fierce energy, suddenly slamming it at Dongfang Gan's chest. Dongfang Gan also raised his fist at the same time and also sent a punch at the Fang King. The instant the two fists collided, the entire force field was broken and a terrifying energy was released, flattening the surrounding ruins in a single breath. Dongfang Gan's source spirit armor shattered and he was sent flying several hundred meters like a cannonball. Like a meteor, he created a large hole in the ground and his internal organs were all injured. The Fang King's strength was truly deep, even Dongfang Gan was weaker than him by quite a bit. Against a person like the Fang King, the Southern Summer experts would find it hard to defeat him alone, so they could only use a suicide squad to exhaust his spirit energy. Only when his strength was weak would they be able to kill him in a single move. Kill the Southern Summer King! Kill the Southern Summer King! The Warhound's army was filled with excitement when they saw the Fang King's bravery. The Southern Summer Country's firepower was too strong, so it would be very hard to capture the Southern Summer Country. However, if the Fang King could kill the Southern Summer King Dongfang Gan in a single move, Central State would fall into chaos and they would have a chance at that time. Even if they failed to capture the city in the end, there would still be chaos and it would be much easier for the army to attack. The Fang King naturally would not miss this good chance. The golden drum released a dazzling bolt of lightning that stabbed at the retreating Dongfang Gan. However, at this time, the space in front of them twisted and a petite figure walked out. Who is it? This person's appearance was too sudden, and the Fang King did not have time to defend. A beautiful white jade-like hand grabbed the Fang King's golden drum that was flickering with thunder and lightning. That surging spirit energy was released, instantly causing the Fang King to feel his body tremble as he retreated several meters. That figure flashed and appeared behind him again. A sparkling and translucent dagger slashed through the air, cutting a hole in the air like a piece of cloth. This is bad. The Fang King stepped into it and was instantly surrounded by the spatial energy. It was already too late for him to escape, and when he came back to his senses, he was already over 100 miles away, standing in the air above a forest. Damn! What was going on here? Did the Southern Summer Country still have hidden experts? Only, even if the Southern Summer Country had hidden experts, they shouldn't be this strong. The Fang King had never seen a person that could force him back with pure spirit energy. Even in the Eagle Burial Kingdom, there weren't many experts that could do this. Not to mention that this person's spirit energy attribute was very special, it was actually the rarely seen spatial attribute. The Fang King was caught off guard, so he was taken away from Central State. Who are you? When the Fang King saw this unknown expert, he couldn't help but be stunned. She was a short girl around 1.4 meters tall, barefooted, with a pair of sparkling and translucent ankles that were as spotless as jade. She wore a crown of flowers on her head, and her face was filled with immaturity. This was clearly a young elf. Why are the elves getting involved? The Fang King could not understand this. The southern summer country did not have any background, there was no doubt about this, otherwise the Eagle Burial Kingdom would know about it. The elves would not help a human country for no reason, this was not in line with the elves' style since ancient times. Vivian couldn't hold it in any longer. Chu Tian had told her not to reveal her strength and identity in front of too many people, otherwise the entire southern summer country would know that there was a young elf helping them repel the spirit beasts. The elven forest would immediately receive this news and it would be disadvantageous to miracle commerce. The best method was to take advantage of the Fang King and the southern summer king's fight and suddenly make a move. Before anyone could react or even see what was happening, Vivian would send the Fang King out of the battlefield. This way, the warhounds would lose their leader and Vivian would be able to fight as she pleased. Do elves need a reason to fight spirit beasts? Vivian had fought quite a few spirit beast experts in the forest. This warhound's kingdom's Fang King was indeed a bit troublesome, but he was not Vivian's match with his strength. Seeking death. The Fang King instantly stabbed out with the drum. Spatial crack. Vivian was prepared to use the method she used on Dongfang Gan to deal with the Fang King. First she would tear open a spatial crack to block the Fang King's attack and then she would create another spatial crack on the Fang King's body. As long as the Fang King's weapon touched the spatial crack, the one who would be pierced by the spatial crack would be himself. The Fang King could feel the spatial energy fluctuations and his weapon stopped in front of the spatial crack. However, the golden drum released lightning that went around the spatial crack to shoot at Vivian. This spirit beast really did have some skills. Vivian had fought quite a few strong characters in the Forest of Chaos, but there were very few opponents that could see through Vivian's spatial control. For the Fang King to be able to do this, it really wasn't simple. Vivian's source spirit was the spatial dagger and her main ability was to create spatial cracks by cutting through space. All of her attacks, defenses, and movements were based on this foundation. Vivian could not only tear through space to teleport, she could also cut through space and do things normal people couldn't do. Therefore, no secret realm or cage could trap her. Other than that, Vivian also had an extraordinary attack because she could cut through space, so she could cut through anything on a spatial level. Cut! Vivian's right arm swung out. That space was torn apart by an invisible force, and like a big mouth, it swallowed up all the lightning. The Fang King's expression slightly changed. With your strength, why are you working for the southern summer insects? Could it be that you want miracle commerce and Chu Tian's knowledge? If it's like this, we can share it and mind our own business. The Fang King retreated a bit. This little elf's cultivation was a bit higher than his and she had the innate spatial energy that could only be found once in 100 million on the continent. Even if the Fang King was strong and experienced, it would be hard for him to kill the other side. Vivian disdainfully curled her lips. I don't want to work with spirit beasts. If you don't die today, then I will live, so what's the point of saying so much? The Fang King was also enraged. This elf simply didn't know what was good for her. The Fang King raised the golden drum and summoned thousands of lightning bolts. They were like dense raindrops, all of them crazily pouring out in all directions. This elf's innate talent was not normal, but she had to cut through space to control it. The Fang King filled the surrounding space with lightning and it was hard to tell where the Fang King was with the naked eye. Vivian wanted to cut open space to teleport over, but when the spatial crack opened beside the Fang King, large amounts of lightning wildly poured into the spatial crack, making it impossible for Vivian to teleport. Did he fill his body with energy to stop Vivian's movements? No, this was just the beginning. Thunder god's body. The lightning in the surroundings suddenly gathered together and attached to the Fang King's divine sense, turning him into a giant more than 6 meters tall. This giant had a beast face and a human body, with a pair of giant wings. Its body was made of solidified lightning energy, and the Fang King's aura instantly increased by several times. This was troublesome. Everyone knew that the spatial attribute was one of the strongest attributes, but they didn't know that the stronger the power, the more restrictions there were. When Vivian controlled space, she was mainly affected by 2 factors. The first was the effect of distance. The further the distance, the lower the accuracy. For example, if Vivian wanted to cut open a person 10 meters away, she could easily do it, but it would be difficult to make it 100 meters away, and the accuracy would be very poor at 1,000 meters. This was because spatial control relied on divine sense to locate the target. The further the distance, the weaker the divine sense, and the more inaccurate the location would be. The second was the stability of space. The stability of space would also affect accuracy. This space was stable most of the time, but when the space was filled with powerful energy, the space would be affected by the energy fluctuations and become unstable. If Vivian's strength was not enough to overcome the interference of the energy, it would be very hard for her attacks to hit the other side. The Fang King continued to release high-intensity energy into the surrounding space. This was to affect the stability of space and obstruct Vivian's control of space. He also used the energy waves to interfere with divine sense, making it hard for Vivian to locate him. Damn, she never thought that this fellow would know so much. Could it be that he had dealt with a spatial source spirit before? Chapter 720. The barbarians were not smart, so they did not understand what had happened. Rather they were filled with gratitude towards Chu Tian. After all, Chu Tian did not kill them all, rather he was feeding them well. There were several 100,000 barbarians and each one had a shocking appetite. Eating fish and meat every day was a shocking consumption, so Miracle Commerce had to bring in food from other states to maintain it. The barbarians lived in a city that had been abandoned to avoid the beast disaster. Miracle Commerce's employees installed streetlights, repaired the houses, and established law and order for the barbarians. Chu Tian promised that humans would not interfere with the internal management of the barbarians, and the various barbarian tribe chiefs would form a team of several dozen people. The barbarians went from living in a primitive society to living a modern life. Because the factories and mines were not open, the barbarians ate and drank all day, so their lives were very comfortable. Chu Tian ordered people to announce a cultivation technique called the berserk art to the barbarians. He wrote a ruler's letter announcing that he would reward the barbarians to practice. Father Miracle Commerce has money. You barbarians obediently practice your cultivation technique in the city, don't eat your fill and cause trouble. Not only is the cultivation technique free, as long as you can practice it, you will be heavily rewarded. The barbarians did not dare believe that Miracle Commerce would not only feed them and give them better living conditions, they would also give the barbarians a cultivation technique to practice. This was simply too crazy. Only was this cultivation technique suitable for the barbarians? The barbarian civilization did not have any cultivation techniques passed down. This was not just because the barbarian civilization was low. The main reason was that the barbarians did not have any innate source spirit, so the human cultivation techniques and the mainstream cultivation techniques of the continent were not suitable for the barbarians. Therefore, most of the barbarians did not cultivate spirit energy and walked on the path of pure physical strength. The barbarians were all crazy with muscles, they were not worse than body refinement cultivators, but it was hard to find a true expert. Therefore, the barbarians could only be bandits since ancient times, harming one side, killing and pillaging as their profession. They had never established a kingdom or civilization, so the barbarians had a very low status on the continent. The several dozen barbarian tribe chiefs studied the cultivation technique. In the end, the old barbarian was shocked to find that this berserk art was a cultivation technique made for the barbarians. This cultivation technique was fundamentally different from the other cultivation techniques on the continent. The mainstream cultivation techniques of the continent focused on cultivating spirit energy, but this berserk art was innovative. It focused on tempering one's physique and focused on training one's life force, so it did not have a strong requirement for spirit energy. It was not an exaggeration. This cultivation technique could completely change the fate of the barbarians. The entire barbarian race was stirred, they all believed in the country-guarding ruler. The various tribe chiefs organized the barbarians to practice every day. Although they did not know why the country-guarding ruler did this, they could not reject a good thing like a meat pie falling from the sky. The facts proved. There were no real idiots in this world, it was just that they had not received proper guidance. Even if it was a low-class race like the barbarians, as long as they found the right path, it would be easy for them to achieve success. In just a few days, the barbarians had someone who had grasped the berserk art. After Chu Tian learned of this matter, he immediately went to Barbarian City. The country-guarding ruler is here. Quickly come out and welcome him. The barbarians never thought that Chu Tian would have any intentions. Chu Tian had the power to exterminate the scattered barbarians, so why did he have to go around in circles and make it so troublesome? Moreover, repairing the barbarian cities and providing them with food, that cost real money and it was not a small amount. Now he was giving the barbarians a cultivation technique, giving them a chance to change their fate. Chu Tian brought Chen Bingyu and Dongfang Haoren as guards, as well as a few normal people in closed-door cultivation to Barbarian City. The entire Barbarian City was very lively right now. There were many barbarians everywhere, each one around 2 meters tall. They were covered in paint, had feathers on them, and had strange bone decorations on them. It was a very spectacular scene. Country-guarding ruler. Country-guarding ruler. The barbarians shouted out with a voice like thunder. Chu Tian was like an angel in the eyes of the barbarians. Several dozen barbarian chiefs quickly came out to welcome him. Each barbarian knew in their hearts that this normal-looking human man had the power to easily destroy the entire barbarian race. With a single word, the entire southern state barbarians would disappear. Even the most civilized race on the continent respected the strong, not to mention a barbaric and primitive race like the barbarians. Therefore, when they saw Chu Tian, their hearts were filled with gratitude. Chu Tian directly asked, "Who has grasped the berserk art?" Several dozen old barbarian chiefs brought out over 100 young barbarians. These barbarians were the youngest elites with the most potential, so it was because of this that they could quickly grasp the berserk art. This ruler wants to create a barbarian personal guard. Chu Tian directly said, "You are all the most outstanding barbarian warriors, so you will follow me from today onwards. Miracle Commerce will give you enough attention and training. As long as you work for me, you will not suffer a loss." What reason did these chiefs have to reject him? This was the famous country-guarding ruler. If the barbarians could become the country-guarding ruler's personal guard, the barbarians' status would be completely different. Not to mention the fact that the country-guarding ruler had promised to train them. This ruler was not only the person with the highest status in the southern summer country, he was also the leader of Miracle Commerce and was famous for his wealth. If they could obtain his training, they would truly become phoenixes. Chu Tian did not stay in the barbarian city and immediately brought the 100 barbarians to the southern state laboratory. Gu Qianqiu brought a group of white-haired researchers to the laboratory, working on a strange sealed cabin. This sealed cabin was made of metal and had a door made of hard diamond. It was around 10 feet tall and could hold a barbarian warrior. The barbarians were very nervous. They did not know what Chu Tian wanted to do. Chu Tian explained to them, "No need to be nervous, this is not a bad thing for you. On the contrary, this is a good chance to be reborn." Gu Qianqiu took out a small and exquisite box that had several hundred red potions neatly stacked inside. He randomly took one out. "Can we start now?" These were the berserk blood potions that the Research Institute had recently developed. The materials used for the wild blood medicine were very rare. There were all kinds of fierce beast blood, demonic things, and etc. Although they were very rare, there weren't many areas where they could be used, so they weren't very expensive. Of course, this was only relatively speaking. This small box of medicine was worth at least several 100 million gold coins. Let's test the barbarian's strength first. The researchers brought the barbarians to a room on the side and began to use various machines to test their physical strength. They tested their fist strength, arm strength, and explosive strength. The barbarian's iron fist slammed into an iron rake. Pang! The entire iron rake caved in and the researchers immediately recorded it on the side. Fist strength 11. This was a very shocking number. This meant that at the same cultivation level, this barbarian's pure physical strength was 13 times that of a human's. This barbarian was only at the 5th body refinement rank, but even a 9th body refinement rank human would not be able to block one of his fists. Gu Qianqiu couldn't help feeling surprised. This is truly an unbelievable physical strength. Fist strength, arm strength, wrist strength, leg strength, all the data was roughly calculated. The barbarian's physical strength and strength were all around 10 times that of a human. The barbarians did not have any cultivation techniques, they could only rely on brute force to create their own territory. This was the foundation of the barbarian's survival. Begin the berserk transformation test. A barbarian was sent into the sealed cabin. The researcher inserted a medicine into the nozzle and the dark red liquid was suddenly sucked out by the vacuum pressure. Then the sealed cabin was filled with a red mist. The barbarian did not know what was going on at first and looked around in a daze. Following that, a spicy and stimulating aura instantly filled his body, making his skin incomparably hot. It was as if every cell in his body was releasing power. His mind suddenly went blank as intense pain, anger, and berserk covered his divine sense. Ah! Ah! The barbarian cried out in pain in the sealed cabin. When a large amount of red mist was absorbed by his skin and body, the blood vessels in his eyes quickly spread. His originally dark skin gradually turned red, and the blue veins on his body bulged like centipedes, constantly twitching and twisting in his muscles. It was a very frightening scene to behold. Dong, dong, dong. The barbarian released a terrifying killing intent and slammed into the sealed cabin like an angry rhinoceros, causing the entire laboratory to shake. However, the sealed cabin was made of special diamond, so even if a giant elephant was trapped inside, it would not be able to escape. In a few seconds, his black skin turned dark red and the barbarian's muscles became at least a size stronger. Dong! At this time, a punch landed on the diamond cabin door and actually created a few small cracks on the cabin door. This barbarian had already lost his consciousness and was like an angry killing machine. His body was covered in a scarlet glow as he roared out. He kept attacking the cabin door, trying to tear everything in sight to pieces. The barbarian warrior revealed a look of fear. What did the people from Miracle Commerce do? This wild state did not last long before the barbarian gradually calmed down. This was the effect of the berserk art, suppressing his wild rage and desire to kill. The barbarian's breathing and heartbeat slowly stabilized, but his body was still filled with a dangerous aura, just like a terrifying beast. The red mist slowly disappeared as it was completely absorbed. Chu Tian waved his hand at Gu Qianqiu. Open it. There won't be any problems, right? Relax, everything is under control. Gu Qianqiu was not afraid of him. Although living beings had gone berserk and their strength had increased by more than 10 times, it was still impossible for him to threaten a peak 9th awakened soul layer cultivator. The barbarian warrior walked out of the sealed cabin. Chu Tian asked, "How do you feel?" "I don't know." The barbarian man had a blank look on his face. "I feel like my strength has increased by quite a bit." Chu Tian made a gesture, fist strength test. The researcher took out a fist target and let the barbarian test his strength. Hong! The barbarian's heavy fist slammed into the metal target and an explosive sound rang in everyone's ears. The metal target instantly shattered to pieces. His fist strength has broken through 100. Everyone couldn't help taking in a cold breath. If this fist hit a first awakened soul layer cultivator, it would be enough to cripple that awakened soul cultivator. Chu Tian did other tests on the barbarian warrior. Whether it was his physical strength, physique, endurance, or explosive power, they all received a terrifying increase. The barbarian's sensitivity to pain had greatly decreased, his willpower had increased by a large amount, and his body's recovery rate had increased by several times. This was the effect of going berserk. Miracle Commerce's researcher had a look of surprise. Chu Tian gave a satisfied nod. That's right, this is the berserker I wanted. Chapter 721. Then she could only try the Chu Tian sex cultivation technique. Vivian had innate spatial energy, but because she didn't have a suitable cultivation technique, she could only rely on her source spirit's ability to cut through space to fight, so her fighting style was quite simple. Spatial rending teleportation and spatial slicing, these two abilities were built on the foundation of cutting through space. Now that the Fang King had used lightning to seal the surrounding space, Vivian couldn't teleport over. She also used her energy to create spatial fluctuations, and Vivian's spatial slicing couldn't hit the Fang King, so there was nothing she could do. After all, Vivian's defenses were weak and she couldn't block this kind of powerful energy. If the Fang King wanted to run now, Vivian couldn't do anything. But it seemed like the Fang King didn't plan on running, as he raised his giant thunder spike and charged at Vivian. The Fang King was clear that this elf's innate spatial energy could tear through space to teleport, so even if he ran, he would be caught. Not to mention that as the commander of the army, how could the Fang King abandon the army and run? This elf's defenses were very weak, and other than spatial techniques, she didn't have any other abilities. As long as he could get close, he should be able to kill her in a single strike, even if the other side's cultivation was higher than his. How could Vivian not know what the other side was thinking? Humph, this dirty spirit beast wants to kill me. Vivian had only cultivated the void escaping cultivation technique for a few days, but she had already grasped a few tricks. This was not related to Vivian's innate talent. After all, she was a true spirit realm expert and she hadn't cultivated a spatial cultivation technique in many years. Now that she had a cultivation technique that matched her source spirit, naturally it complemented her source spirit. When the Fang King got close to Vivian, he spread out lightning, covering Vivian's surroundings. The lightning released intense energy in a short period of time, quickly interfering with the surrounding space and restricting Vivian's teleportation ability. Die! A bolt of lightning condensed into a spike that slammed into Vivian's body. Vivian's body trembled at this time as the lightning spike pierced through Vivian's chest. The dazzling energy pierced through her back. Did she die? The Fang King revealed a look of joy. With this kind of strong energy attack, it would be hard for her not to die. But at this time, the Fang King was surprised to find that Vivian's body didn't show any signs of being injured by the lightning at all. This fierce attack seemed to have hit air and not Vivian's body. Vivian was getting closer and closer to the Fang King's body. This is bad. The Fang King felt a strong sense of danger. Vivian revealed a sly smile. This distance should be enough. She raised her white as jade palm and condensed a spatial blade that slashed across the Fang King's body. Spatial cutting. Cutting objects from the spatial layer. Ignoring the hardness of the object, it could cut even the hardest object. Puchi. Blood light appeared. Everything happened in an instant. The Fang King was cut in half at the waist. The Warhound's Kingdom's Fang King didn't even know what had happened, but he had been killed like this. This was too easy to use. This was the effect of the void escaping. Void escaping, escaping into the void, it truly lived up to its name. When Vivian used the void escaping, her body was covered in spatial spirit energy. Even if the other side could see her, her body had already been separated by a layer of spatial energy, no longer being in the normal spatial structure. In theory, this state made her immune to all attacks. Be it ice, fire, wind, or lightning, everything that passed through Vivian's body would be evaded by the spatial plane, so they couldn't touch Vivian, much less cause any damage to her. However, she could use the special ability of the spatial dagger to attack across space. The void escaping essence was an unpredictable spatial movement technique. Once Vivian mastered this cultivation technique, with the attack power of her source spirit, spatial dagger, others couldn't hit her and she could hit others. Her strength would reach a terrifying level and those geniuses of the same level would be instantly killed. The void escaping was not completely invincible. She wouldn't receive normal injuries, but attacks on her mind, soul, space, and time were still effective. Other than that, the void escaping state was like a dividing line. If one's strength wasn't strong enough, even if there were millions of attacks, Vivian wouldn't be injured at all and wouldn't consume more energy. However, if the attack was powerful enough to disrupt space and break through the spatial barrier, then it would be able to destroy Vivian's cultivation technique. Vivian had just cultivated the void escaping and her cultivation technique wasn't strong enough. Even if she was attacked by someone with a similar cultivation base, her cultivation technique would still be broken. But it was a pity that the Fang King's cultivation base was weaker than Vivian's, so he couldn't break this spatial cultivation technique. Vivian's strength would increase in the future. If her cultivation technique reached the large success realm, she would be strong to the point that normal attacks would not be able to threaten her in the same realm. Whether the other side was 3 or 5 layers higher than her, as long as they were in the same realm, normal attacks would be ineffective. This was the fearsomeness of spatial cultivation techniques. Done. Vivian sent the Fang King's corpse back to Central State. The Fang King suddenly disappeared from the battlefield and reappeared after around half a minute, but he had turned into a corpse that had been cut in half. The Warhound's army's morale had completely collapsed. The Warhound's planes could only form the Warhound's kingdom with the Fang King. Once the Warhounds lost the supreme Fang King, they would instantly return to being a group of headless Warhounds clans. Now the Fang King was dead. Wouldn't the Warhounds' planes return to the past? Retreat, retreat. The Warhound's chief felt that there was no need to fight. Instead of wasting troops in Central State City, it was better to expand their territory on the plains. The Fang King had been killed, the Warhound's kingdom had collapsed, and the tribal alliance had been broken. Was it that easy? Spatial rope. When the Warhound's chief stepped out, the surrounding space distorted like an invisible rope was trying to trap him. This was a secret technique of the void escaping technique. This is bad. The Warhound's chief tried to break free, but it was already too late. Vivian instantly appeared beside the Warhound's chief and used a spatial cut to cut his body in half. She did not stop for even half a second as she disappeared to the side again. Too fast. The other 2 Warhound's chiefs already realized that the southern summer country had someone who could control space. How could the 2 of them be careless? The 2 of them released their spirit energy, interfering with the spatial fluctuations around them. Moreover, they quickly moved in different directions to avoid being caught by the spatial shackles, blocking the sneak attack of the spatial expert. Vivian's teeth itched with hatred. These fellows were truly sly. If it wasn't for Vivian not being seen by everyone, she would have chased after the 2 of them already. Now there was no other way. They were already prepared and it was hard for Vivian to make a move, so she could only let the 2 of them leave. They had a large victory in the Central State battle. The enemy army was almost completely annihilated. From the famous Fang King to the 2 Warhounds chiefs, they had all died here. The southern summer country had defended the 6 southern counties and had even killed the Fang King. With this kind of glorious result, the southern summer citizens were filled with pride and satisfaction. At this time, an incomparably exciting piece of news came from the 4 states lake. The Warhounds' main army of around 600,000 had been completely annihilated. Completely annihilated. It was actually completely annihilated. When the southern summer people heard this news, they almost suspected that there was something wrong with their ears. Chu Tian had brought 200,000 people and had actually annihilated 600,000 enemies. This was simply a miraculous result. Moreover, after this battle at the 4 states lake, over half of the Warhounds' plains main force had been annihilated, so they could no longer invade the south. The southern summer country had lost several 100,000 elites. The war hounds had also lost several 100,000 elites. The war hounds had taken one region and 2 states, but the southern summer country had killed the war hounds' king. This seemed like both sides had lost, but the war hounds were no longer a threat. The southern summer country could recover their lost territory at any time. But he was afraid of the eagle burial warring kingdom behind the war hounds, so before the time was ripe, Dongfang Gan did not dare take back the imperial region. This was to avoid provoking the eagle burial kingdom and causing them to crazily retaliate at all costs. The biggest hidden danger now was the eagle burial warring kingdom. The southern summer country had destroyed the warhounds' main force in one fell swoop and killed the eagle burial warring kingdom's king, causing the warhounds that had the potential to become a large kingdom to quickly decline. The eagle burial warring kingdom could not swallow this anger. As an incomparably strong warring kingdom, their military strength was very strong. If they wanted to destroy the southern summer country, the southern summer country would have to face an invasion 10 times stronger than the warhounds. How could they resist this? The eagle burial warring kingdom was an ambitious warring kingdom, fighting on all sides to expand their territory, so they would not muster a large force for a small southern summer country. Not to mention the fact that the southern summer country defeated the warhounds' kingdom in a very strange manner. If Dongfang Gan deliberately misled them and made them suspect that the Forest of Chaos was supporting the southern summer country, the eagle burial warring kingdom would be cautious. Without a thorough investigation, they would not dare provoke an unknown enemy. The southern summer country still had time to prepare, but it was hard to estimate how long it would take. In short, the southern summer country's crisis was far from over. Dongfang Gan had gathered everyone to discuss how to strengthen the southern summer country's defenses in a limited amount of time, preparing to defend against the eagle burial warring kingdom's invasion. The great scholar Gu Qianqiu said, "The current southern summer country is small, poor in resources, and thin in spiritual energy. If we defend this place, even with miracle commerce's weapons, it will be hard to defend against the eagle burial warring kingdom. Moreover, paper can't contain fire. With the southern summer country using source energy weapons on such a large scale, I estimate that it will be spread to other countries in a month or 2. At that time, not only the eagle burial warring kingdom, the other kingdoms will also be interested." This was one of the things the southern summer king was most worried about. The source energy weapons were the southern summer country's confidence in resisting the eagle burial warring kingdom, but it could also bring a terrifying disaster to the southern summer country. After all, the source energy weapons were just too attractive. No matter which country it was, as long as they had this weapon, they could increase their national strength by 10 times. Not to mention the kingdoms, even the empires would be interested. At that time, the southern summer country would not only be facing the eagle burial warring kingdom, they would also be facing the threat of other strong countries on the continent. With the southern summer country's current weak national strength, how could they protect miracle commerce? Trees will die when they move, people will live when they are poor. If we want to resist the threat of other powers, we can't just remain stagnant. Gu Qianqiu expressed his opinion, "I think we need to expand outwards." The great scholar's words are reasonable. Dongfang Gan gave a slight nod, "We can't advance to the north and there are no rich lands to the east and west, only the south can be taken a risk." According to what this king knows, although the southern forest is very rich, it has a large number of unimaginable powers, and the best of them are not inferior to the existence of a warring kingdom. The southern summer country is too weak, so if we recklessly enter, we'll be swallowed without even bones remaining. What does everyone think we should do? A single eagle burial kingdom could force the southern summer country to this state. The peak powers in the Forest of Chaos were not inferior to warring kingdoms. The entire Forest of Chaos had the potential and resources to form a giant empire. With such a rich and fertile land, even if the southern summer country absorbed a bit of resources, it would be enough to increase the southern summer country's national strength. This was indeed a good way to quickly increase the southern summer country's strength. Only, could the southern summer country really gain a foothold in this kind of place? The southern summer country might not be able to, but miracle commerce can. Meng Qingguo stood up and said, it will be much easier for Miracle Commerce to enter the Forest of Chaos. This was true. The southern summer country was weak, but it was still a country. If they used their country's identity to enter, they would be labeled as invaders by the locals and would be suppressed hard to resist at that time. Miracle Commerce was different. The Forest of Chaos was very chaotic, but because of the chaos, there were many business opportunities. There were many merchants on the continent that were willing to take risks, and the locals did not reject foreign merchants. Chapter 722. In the era Chu Tian lived in, the barbarians no longer existed. Chu Tian had done some research on this race. Speaking of the barbarians were considered close relatives of humans in the ancient era, but they were mixed with the bloodline of an ancient beast. The barbarians' ancestors were a very strong race, but after several tens of thousands of years, the wild energy in the barbarians' blood became thinner and thinner, so this race became weaker and weaker. The barbarians were a rare race that relied on their physical strength. Although they couldn't awaken their source spirits and weren't suited to cultivating any attributed cultivation techniques, the barbarians had a very strong life force. If they could cultivate a non-attributed cultivation technique and develop their physical strength to the peak, the barbarians would still be a strong race. The wild blood medicine was a special medicine that could cause a berserk reaction. What was berserk? The berserk transformation was similar to the demonic transformation. When the infernal flames invaded the thunder state, the abyss aura caused a large number of humans to be demonized, causing many weak or weak low-level cultivators to suddenly become terrifying abyss demon soldiers, which could directly threaten high-level cultivators. This was the result of the demonic transformation. The berserk transformation was the same as the demonic transformation, but the principle was different. The dark energy infecting a living being was the cause of the demonic transformation, but the berserk transformation was when the power of the vicious beast surged in, stimulating one's potential and fully developing one's physical strength. The demonic transformation was even more extreme, so it was basically irreversible. Although the berserk transformation was not as extreme as the demonic transformation, normal living beings would still pay a large price for going berserk. The berserk transformation could increase one's strength by a large amount, but the price was losing one's rationality. They would become crazy and bloodthirsty, unable to differentiate between friend and foe. The berserk transformation would crazily kill everything they saw, feeling no pain, no fatigue, and finally dying from exhaustion. The barbarians had a special physique and bloodline, so they were one of the few living beings that could undergo the berserk transformation. The berserk art was a cultivation technique made for the berserkers. Not only could it increase the berserker's potential, it could also suppress the berserker's berserk state, allowing the berserker to maintain a clear mind in battle. The most important thing was that with each berserk transformation, this cultivation technique would quickly evolve. When this terrifying super soldier type was created, Chu Tian would bring them to fight all over the place, allowing the berserkers to fight more often. This way, the berserker's strength would become higher and higher. Each berserker had a strong destructive might. Once they went berserk, they would not feel pain, fatigue, or fear. They were a group of killing machines that would never stop. This was a soldier type that could quickly level up. Gu Qianqiu began to transform the other 100 barbarians into berserkers. These barbarians were the elites of the barbarians. When they went berserk, they could instantly cripple a second to third awakened soul layer cultivator in close combat. If these warriors formed a large army in the future, they would become a sharp blade in Miracle Commerce's hands. They could be considered a trump card army in a warring kingdom. This was a high-level army that could grow. Chu Tian planned to create a berserker army in a month. The initial cost of creating these berserkers was not low, mainly because of the berserk blood potion. After the berserker army was formed, they would need the berserk blood potion to increase their strength. But compared to the value of the army, Miracle Commerce could accept this price. A strong army could not have strong equipment. Chu Tian specially ordered a set of equipment for the berserker army. First was the normal equipment and weapons. The barbarian warriors were very strong, so normal light armor and weapons were not suitable for them. Therefore, The Berserkers' basic equipment was a set of thick profound iron armor and a giant battle axe that weighed several hundred pounds. The equipment itself was made of level 3 metal with runes engraved on it, so normal awakened soul cultivators would find it hard to break it. If this equipment was worn by a human, they wouldn't be able to stand after a few steps, but to the Berserkers, it was as light as a feather. A heavy profound iron axe was swung with the strength of a barbarian soldier. It was heavy and could split mountains and rivers. If it was an army of tens of thousands of berserkers, it would be like building a steel wall on the battlefield. At least in the southern summer country, other than the Griffin Knights in the air, there was no other army that could break through this kind of defense. How could normal equipment be enough? This was Miracle Commerce's direct army. Chu Tian came to the weapons department of the Yun Sect's laboratory. How is the research on the source energy cannons? Yun Tianhe was working with a group of scholars and Meng Qinggu was helping out in the laboratory. She personally introduced it to Chu Tian. There are no results for now. The source energy cannons were one of the armies Chu Tian made for the berserkers. This kind of weapon was a compressed version of the source energy cannons. Although it didn't have the terrifying destructive power of the source energy cannons, it was much more portable. With the barbarian warriors' strength, they could carry it with them. With several dozen people equipped, they could easily break through the battlefield and provide a strong destructive power for the entire team. Although it was just a smaller version, it wasn't simple, so it was normal that it wasn't completed. What about the source energy swords? There are some results, but they can't be used. When he looked through the window of a laboratory, Chu Tian could see a few researchers working on a strange weapon. This weapon looked like a small handle with a strong energy structure inside. The handle was a source energy array, and when the weapon was activated, a high heat energy beam came out of the handle. It looked like a flashlight. But the difference was that the beam that came out of the handle was solid. When the high energy combined, it formed a solid substance, so it had a terrifying temperature. It could cut through steel like tofu. This was a basic close combat source energy weapon. Chu Tian had provided the blueprints and let the laboratory try to make it. From the looks of it, the results were not good enough. Each energy sword was unstable. Where is the main problem? The main problem is the materials and energy. Meng Qinggu replied, most of our materials come from the southern summer country. Even if we use the highest grade materials, it is hard to bear the heat and energy produced when the energy swords are formed. Moreover, our energy batteries are not strong enough. The energy swords don't even last 10 seconds before they become weak, so it is hard to keep the energy swords stable. When we were making the source energy cannons, we had already used up all of our high-grade metals. Chu Tian gave a sigh. There really was nothing perfect in this world. He was prepared to make 8,000 berserkers. Each berserker would wear heavy armor, have a heavy axe, and be equipped with source energy grenades, source energy swords, individual cannons, and storm rifles, suitable for all kinds of situations. If he really had this kind of army, Chu Tian could directly charge into the forest of chaos and kill everyone. No matter how strong the locals were, could they block this kind of formation? Perhaps 100 storm rifles would be enough to make the locals run away like rats. We need large amounts of weapons. Meng Qinggu was very clear on Miracle Commerce's situation, especially the source energy cannons and storm rifles, these super strong weapons. Only, these weapons have very high requirements for materials. If the southern summer country can't find this kind of ore, I'm afraid we will be stuck for a long time. Time is precious, we can't drag it out. Chu Tian said, from tomorrow onwards, we'll split up. You wouldn't be thinking of going to the Forest of Chaos first, right? Miracle Commerce was not prepared yet, so wouldn't going to the Forest of Chaos in a rush alert the enemy? The Eagle Burial Kingdom could make a move against the southern summer country at any time, so Chu Tian had to prepare ahead of time. You'll stay in southern state to take care of the infrastructure on the outer layer of the Forest of Chaos, as well as the recruitment of soldiers. I'll enter the Forest of Chaos. Relax, I'm going to find resources this time and ask around, I won't make this matter big. Meng Qinggu was a bit hesitant. I'm afraid it's too risky. I'll bring Vivian with me. Everything will be fine. Vivian's cultivation was deep and she had an innate spatial energy. Even if she met someone she couldn't beat, she would most likely be able to run away. So with Vivian by Chu Tian's side, Chu Tian would be very safe. Then it's like this. Meng Qinggu took over all the work and began to build the Berserker army. On the second day, Miracle Commerce brought out over 100 reborn barbarians. Each of them were equipped with powerful armor and weapons, and Meng Qinggu brought them to Barbarian City. Barbarian City was instantly filled with a large stir. The old chief never would have thought that after leaving for a few days, his clansmen would all become completely different people. Their strength had increased by at least 5-6 times. Any one of these 100 people would be a terrifying existence that an early or mid-awakened soul cultivator would find hard to deal with. What made the barbarians even more jealous was Southern States Marquis Meng Qinggu announced, these over 100 people had officially joined Miracle Commerce and were now directly trained by Miracle Commerce. This was equal to receiving an iron rice bowl. Miracle Commerce was famous for their generous treatment. Other than that, each barbarian that became a berserker would not only gain strength, their families would also be taken care of by Miracle Commerce. The berserkers had signed a contract with Miracle Commerce. As long as they served for 5 years, they would no longer have their freedom. The berserkers had the right to withdraw from the army and return to the barbarian region to live. Miracle Commerce did not need to take the initiative to recruit soldiers. In just a few short days, several tens of thousands of young barbarians begged to become Miracle Commerce's soldiers. They would give you strength, freedom, and even take care of your family. To the barbarians, this was a chance to stand out. Of course, Miracle Commerce would not be polite. Meng Qinggu used her status as the Southern States Marquis to announce that as long as they cultivated the Berserker art, they would be able to join Miracle Commerce's reserve army and receive the Berserker transformation. Once the news came out, in just 2 short days, the number of Berserkers in the reserve army reached over 1,000. Miracle Commerce's large amounts of Berserker medicine could barely keep up with the demand. However, as the number of people in the reserve army increased and the materials for the Berserker medicine were used up, this task could not be completed in a short period of time. Recently Meng Qinggu had been in charge and Chu Tian had not appeared for several days. Only the high-level members of Miracle Commerce knew that he had quietly left Southern State and was heading to an unknown area in the south. Chapter 723. Miracle Commerce had developed by leaps and bounds in just half a year, but they were limited by the southern summer country's environment, so they couldn't keep growing. So, they needed to find a new environment to break through. The southern summer country's current situation was not good. They were weak internally and filled with dangers externally. They had new resources and strong hopes, but it was not convenient for them to use the country's power. In this kind of situation, the southern summer country and Miracle Commerce could work together. As long as the southern summer country secretly supported Miracle Commerce in the Forest of Chaos, Miracle Commerce could bring rich resources to the southern summer country in the future, allowing the southern summer country to build a resource field in the Forest of Chaos and even have a place of their own. Even if they failed, at most Miracle Commerce would suffer a heavy blow and the southern summer country would be able to withdraw and not be caught up in it. What reason was there not to give it a try? The Southern Summer King issued 2 royal proclamations. The first was to urge the Cloud Dream Marquis, Meng Qinggu, to take up the position in Southern State as soon as possible. The Southern State Western Marquis had already died in the Imperial City battle. After Meng Qinggu was bestowed the title of Cloud Dream Marquis, she became the trusted Marquis of Southern State, so it was natural for Meng Qinggu to manage Southern State. The second was that because the north was occupied by the spirit beasts, they couldn't take it back in a short time. The southern summer country had not yet obtained the highly developed south, but it still had the advantage of rich resources, so it would become the most important growth point for the southern summer country. Therefore, they used the strength of the country to increase the development of the south. In order to ensure efficiency, the country guarding ruler personally led 200,000 elite soldiers to oversee the development. Southern State was the southernmost region of the southern summer country and the closest place to the Forest of Chaos. Letting Meng Qinggu take up the position in Southern State as the Marquis was to make things easier for Miracle Commerce. After a few days, Miracle Commerce's members set off together. This could be considered an unprecedented move for Miracle Commerce. Not only did Chu Tian bring the core team from Central State, Miracle Commerce's stored resources and money were also sent south by ship. Other than that, Miracle Commerce also brought the army that Dongfang Gan gave him. An army of 200,000 people. They were all storm cavalry. Dongfang Gan gave the southern summer elites to Chu Tian to manage. The southern summer country's #1 ruler, the famous Chu Tian who destroyed 600,000 war hounds, personally led the southern summer elites to Southern State. Meng Qinggu was Miracle Commerce's chairman with real power and was also the Southern State Marquis personally appointed by the Southern Summer King, being able to lead the entire Southern State army. Now there was no one that could compare to their prestige in the Southern Summer country. Southern State City was not as rich as Central State City, but the people were fierce and the people were all martial artists. There were even figures of different races that could be seen. The Southern State Vice City Lord personally led the Southern State Army to greet them. Greetings to the country guarding ruler. Greetings to the Cloud Dream Marquis. When the soldiers kneeled on the ground, they all had a strange feeling in their hearts. Most of the people here had participated in the battle against Central State. They had fought several months ago, but who would have thought that in such a short period of time, Chu Tian would become the country guarding ruler and Meng Qinggu would become the Southern State Marquis. The entire Southern State had become the world of these two people. Fate was always changing, it really made people sigh. After Miracle Commerce entered Southern State, the resources of the country continued to pour in, helping Miracle Commerce develop Southern State. Chu Tian used this chance to collect large amounts of precious materials to refine pills, wildly increasing Miracle Commerce's strength. Very quickly, Meng Yingying, Meng Qinggu, and the other illustrious Soul Realm cultivators all took several top-grade sacred pills and smoothly reached the true Soul Realm, reaching the 7th awakened soul layer. Of course Chu Tian would not mistreat himself. In just a short week, he had used several top-grade level 2 sacred pills and easily jumped a layer, reaching the 8th awakened soul layer. Actually, with Miracle Commerce's current resources, Chu Tian had the ability to increase everyone's strength. However, if they relied on pills to increase their strength in a short period of time, it would only increase their dependence on pills, which would be detrimental to their future growth. Therefore, Chu Tian decided to slow it down. He used the remaining resources on Chen Bingyu and Dongfang Haoren, the two peak 9th awakened soul layer cultivators, building a foundation for them to break through to the true spirit realm. The previous Southern Summer King's son, Dongfang Haoren, had already joined Miracle Commerce. Chu Tian had appointed him as the head of the Chu sect, managing Chu Tian's Chu sect. Dongfang Haoren's talent was not inferior to Chu Xinghe's. If he was properly trained, he would become an expert in the future. While large amounts of resources were used to train high-level members, Miracle Commerce did not forget to develop low and middle-level members. The resources consumed in this period of time was over 10 billion gold coins. Even for the 3 great clans of the kingdom, this was not a small amount. There was no power in the southern summer country that could consume this much resources in just a few days. Miracle Commerce swallowed resources too quickly and large amounts of gold coins flowed into the people. Adding in the chaos from before, the prices in the southern summer country were soaring and the price of a sacred herb was more than double. Chu Tian did not care about this at all. Gold coins were a low-level currency, it was useless once they left the southern summer country. Didn't Chu Tian create Miracle Commerce to collect resources to cultivate and grow? He would spend money when he needed to. As for Miracle Commerce's large spending on the southern summer country's economy, it was not in his consideration. The most important task now was to build the space warehouse. Because Southern State was very primitive and the various infrastructures were very backward, Miracle Commerce needed to transport large amounts of resources over. Shipping and air were too slow, but now that they had a space warehouse, it would be much more convenient to transport resources. Especially after entering the Forest of Chaos. Miracle Commerce's airships couldn't just randomly enter the Forest of Chaos. If they couldn't solve the problem of transporting resources, how could Miracle Commerce develop the Forest of Chaos? Chu Tian personally guided Vivian, Meng Qingguo, and Meng Yingying as they began the construction of the space warehouse. This was because the lowest level of spatial technology was level 3 source energy technology. Only true spirit realm experts with spatial abilities could operate it, so only Vivian could do it. Meng Qingguo and Meng Yingying had a strong learning ability, mainly learning the complex spatial knowledge. Of course, Meng Yingying's learning ability was weaker than Meng Qingguo's, but Meng Yingying's mirror source spirit could imitate other source spirits. There would be a day when Meng Yingying would become an important spatial technology researcher. Today the research room erupted in cheers. Great, we've successfully marked the space. Vivian danced with joy. After using an entire 10 days of time, Vivian had finally placed a spatial spiritual imprint on a subspace. After this imprint was placed, they could choose to summon this subspace in the future. This way, they wouldn't have to randomly summon a subspace. Vivian and Meng Yingying high-fived each other in celebration. Meng Qingguo was also very excited. This progress was much faster than she had imagined. Actually, as long as they could do this, the space warehouse could be used. With the subspace successfully marked, it was time to modify the space. Miracle Commerce used the level 3 source energy array to capture a subspace, but it was only around 1,000 cubic meters. Even if they were lucky, they could find a subspace that was around 2,000 to 3,000 cubic meters. Although it was large enough for normal storage equipment, for a warehouse, this amount of space was not enough. Not to mention, subspaces were often irregular. The subspace marked by the Yun sect was shaped like an irregular flat cake. It was very long and wide, but the highest part was less than 3 feet and the lowest part was less than 10 centimeters. How could this kind of space be used for storage? It would be very inconvenient to transport goods. Most of these naturally formed subspaces were like this, so it was very important to modify the space. Vivian was Miracle Commerce's space engineer. Positioning and marking the space was a small matter, the real work was to modify the space. Chu Tian said to Vivian, "The space warehouse's shape must be regular, your next task is to modify it. I hope to see a cube that is 10 meters in length, width, and height." Ah! Meng Yingying and Vivian had a bitter expression. Changing a flat-shaped space into a cube was not an easy matter. Not only did Vivian need to do this, Meng Yingying and Meng Qingguo also needed to use their spatial knowledge and formulas to do large amounts of calculations. This was definitely a large task. Does it have to be a cube? It has to be a cube. Chu Tian was not purposely making things difficult for them. This spatial technology was a very complex technology. If they couldn't even make a level 3 space warehouse, how could they hope to develop higher-level spatial products in the future? Cubes, or spheres were all fine, but Chu Tian's requirements were a bit stricter. This was also to hone their spatial technology. Vivian was filled with fighting spirit. "No problem, I'll definitely make it into a cube." Chu Tian nodded in satisfaction. "Then let's first do a spatial transportation experiment." Everyone revealed a look of joy. Whether the space warehouse was good or not, it would all depend on the performance of this experiment. If the space warehouse was that fast and convenient, it would set off an unimaginable revolution on the continent. Chu Tian said to Meng Qingguo, "Notify the Central State Yun sect and have them send over 1,000 submachine guns." "All right." Meng Qingguo immediately took out a portable communication device and called the Central State Yun sect's number. "Hello, is this old Zhang? Please bring over 1,000 submachine guns to the spatial laboratory, we're going to do a spatial transportation experiment." Right, don't ask too much for now." Meng Qingguo hung up. At this time, the Central State Yun sect immediately went to the Central State Warehouse and counted the 1,000 source energy submachine guns. Every 100 of them were packed into a box, and finally 10 boxes were sent to the spatial laboratory. Open the source energy array. Central State's laboratory followed the method and opened up the marked space. Everyone placed the weapons chest by chest into the space, and at the same time, the entire city recorded the experimental data. Put all 10 boxes of guns into the space warehouse. The source energy array is stable, but the energy consumption has doubled. Record: after the space warehouse is filled with items, the space warehouse's energy consumption has increased. It is not clear if it is caused by mass or volume. After the Central State Yun sect's researchers finished collecting the data, they immediately closed the source energy array and used the communication device to contact Meng Qinggu. The goods have been sent over there. Chu Tian waved his hand. Let's take the goods. Yes. Meng Yingying excitedly pressed the button to open the space warehouse. The energy pillars released a dazzling light. Meng Qinggu could clearly feel that the energy used to open the space warehouse was several times more than the previous times. The energy pillars were exhausted at a shocking rate. When goods were loaded, the space warehouse's energy consumption would increase. Energy was very cheap in this era, so it wouldn't increase the cost by much. However, it would restrict the quantity and quality of goods transported. This could be considered a kind of restriction, but it was still acceptable. Vivian and Meng Yingying quickly took out the 10 boxes. Each box was still intact, without any damage at all. When they opened the boxes, there were 100 submachine guns neatly stacked on top of each other. There wasn't even the slightest bit of turbulence during the transportation. Wow, perfect, perfect. Meng Yingying excitedly shouted, doesn't this mean that I can eat Central State's roasted chicken in Southern State at any time? Vivian's little face turned red. Not to mention Central State's roasted chicken. When our elves build the space warehouse, I'll have the elders brew the best quality elven green tea for you every day. Even if it's sent to your room from tens of thousands of miles away, it will still be freshly brewed and piping hot. Meng Qinggu couldn't help smiling. These two girls only knew how to eat and drink. Chapter 724. The Forest of Chaos did not have 4 seasons, there was only a rainy season and a dry season. Now was the Forest of Chaos rainy season. The warm and humid air flowed from the west coast to the mountain range, covering the entire Forest of Chaos. The fertile soil and the small population made it easy to obtain food, and there were many varieties to choose from. Whether it was spirit beasts, elves, or even ogres, as long as they found a piece of land and scattered their seeds, they would be able to harvest delicious fruits in the coming year without any cultivation. There was no kingdom, no law, and no order here. People did not need to pay taxes, and they did not need to bow down to anyone. As long as they were strong enough, the rich forest would have endless resources. This was a paradise for experts. It was a hell for the weak. The rich and complex environment gave birth to many different kinds of life. From the ancient species to the rare beasts of the modern era, from the ancient dragons to the elegant elves, they all regarded the Forest of Chaos as their ideal home. Although the resources here could support 100 times the population, it was hard to not have fights where there was life. Humans fighting with humans, humans fighting with beasts, and beasts fighting with beasts were already the most common scenes in the forest. Desires were endless. For example, the Dragon Lord. This giant dragon had lived for thousands of years and occupied the noble dragon city. It was said that his wealth could be piled into the heavens. However, he was still not satisfied with this. He would plunder large amounts of wealth from the subordinate cities every year. The giants of the giant mountain range, they emptied 100 miles of mountains and built the largest palaces in the Forest of Chaos. The treasures inside were coveted by countless experts of the continent. The Elven King ruled the Elven Council, controlling several dozen elven cities and working with several small and medium-sized races, becoming one of the strongest powers in the forest. They controlled countless ancient knowledge and wisdom. The beautiful sea race queen built a city in the sea, stretching from the far west coast to the center of the forest of chaos. She wanted to take all the treasures of the sea and land into her hands. There were countless of these powers that were not weaker than peak warring kingdoms. They wildly explored the forest of chaos, endlessly fighting and killing. The powers intertwined with each other and the forest of chaos was in chaos. Heroes rose together, the strong contended, the weak could only choose to be vassals, and even more of the weak tried their best to hide themselves, maintaining the laws of the dark forest. No one knew just how many unknown secrets and strengths were hidden in this primitive forest. The forest of chaos, the outer region. This place was not strongly affected by the rainy season, but it was still warm and humid. This was a barbaric land with a low degree of development. The roots of the giant trees were everywhere, there were all kinds of fungi and plants, and there were countless poisonous snakes, insects, and flowers. It was like every corner was filled with a fatal danger. In the middle of this dense forest, there was a large open space. This looked like a demon beast's nest. There were several dozen giant lizards lying here and each one was releasing a terrifying aura. They were covered in emerald green scales that glowed like they were made of jade. There was a spring filled with life energy in the center of these lizards. When soaked in this aura, the demon beasts could grow without hunting. Rustle, rustle, rustle. There was suddenly movement in the forest. The giant lizard smelled the scent and stood up. It let out a low, warning growl towards the forest. The bushes full of berries suddenly shook a few times, and a few extremely sharp sword cheese shot out. In an instant, the beautiful scales of the giant lizard were shattered, and a few lizards were injured. Roar! The lizards angrily counterattacked. They opened their huge mouths but didn't spit out anything. Instead, the roots and bushes on the ground seemed to be hit by some kind of energy. They all broke apart and scattered into the air. Each fragment looked like it had been twisted. 5 people wearing travelers' cloaks appeared in their field of vision. Although they were 5 inconspicuous humans, the lizards felt a dangerous aura and immediately attacked as a group. Who knew that at this moment, one of them waved his hand and cut open the space in front of him. The invisible energy that the lizards shot over was all swept into the spatial crack. Boom! The scales on the lizards' bodies instantly exploded and all the energy fell on their bodies. The leader of the lizards was extremely angry. Its strong limbs kicked the ground and it suddenly pounced at the 3 people. At this time, a little white fox jumped out and its small body suddenly changed, turning into a giant monster fox. When the monster fox stared at it with a strange gaze, the lizard king instantly froze in place. Then it suddenly turned around and attacked the other lizards. Another person jumped out. A cold wave came out and froze a lizard into an ice sculpture. Another person conjured a giant sword and sliced the ice sculpture into pieces. There was no suspense in this battle. The 10 lizards were not weak, but they were still level 2 demon beasts. There were a few strong ones that were in the 7th or 8th awakened soul layer and the weakest of these humans was in the 7th awakened soul layer. There was even an elf that had the strength of a true soul cultivator. That's right. These 5 travelers were not others, they were Chu Tian's group. Meng Yingying took out a whistle and forcefully blew it. The surrounding forest began to tremble and a large group of people charged out. When these people saw the lizard corpses on the ground, they all began to cheer in pleasant surprise. The village chief gave the 10 sacred herbs to Chu Tian. This was their thanks to Chu Tian's group. This life essence water originally belonged to their village, but it had been forcefully taken by a group of lizards that passed by. The village had tried to attack them several times, but they had suffered heavy casualties and returned without any results. Today they had met 5 outsiders that were willing to help, so everything that had just happened. They never thought about it. Just by casually eradicating a nest of lizards, they could actually obtain so many precious herbs, and this was only from an unknown small village. The forest of chaos was rich in resources, it was not something the southern summer country could compare to. That night, the spirit beasts had already lit a bonfire. Those large pieces of juicy lizard meat were all placed on the fire with iron rods. The fragrant fat continued to drip into the fire, making a sizzling sound. The rabbit people were dancing around the bonfire. Each one of them had a look of joy on their faces. Several cute rabbit race girls were carrying good quality lizard meat as they blushed shyly and delivered it to Chu Tian. Their eyes were filled with hints. If there was a need, they were willing to provide some special services. There were no moral restrictions in the forest of chaos, and the spirit beasts were like this. Chu Tian looked at the rabbit race girls with interest. From their appearance, the rabbit race people were in line with human aesthetics. They were not covered in fur like some spirit beasts. The spirit beasts had many human characteristics, only having rabbit tails, ears, and etc. The rabbit race had quite a bit of foreign beauty. These rabbit race girls were clearly specially chosen by the village chief to curry favor with them. Chu Tian left a few rabbit race girls to drink with them, while also asking around for information. Meng Yingying used the prepared source energy barbecue array to reheat the meat. The taste of this meat isn't bad. Is that so? I think it's a bit old. They ate until their mouths were covered in oil, and the little fox had already eaten several dozen kilograms of barbecue meat. They were surrounded by rabbit race people, delicious barbecue meat, unique fruit wine, and primitive village. All of this had a special flavor. In short, it was something that couldn't be felt in a human country. They brought a total of 5 people this time. Chen Bingyu, Dongfang Haoren, and Vivian, these 3 were either bodyguards or guides. As for Meng Yingying, she was just here to play. Chu Tian was already a high-level awakened soul cultivator at the 8th awakened soul layer. Meng Yingying had broken through to the 7th awakened soul layer 2 days ago, only a bit later than Nangong Yun and faster than Meng Qinggu and the others. Because of Vivian's strong request, Chu Tian brought her along as a reward for her hard work in cultivation. In a few days, everyone was only at the edge of the forest. The forest of chaos was too large. It was several dozen times larger than the southern summer country. Although this area was mainly covered in forest, it was not completely covered in forest. There were also deserts, beaches, and swamps. Other than that, the population density of the forest of chaos could not compare to the southern summer country, but the demon beast density was several times that of the southern summer country. It was because the forest of chaos was too large. Vivian was not clear on the situation here, so she could only talk about the large powers. As for the other small powers and hidden powers, not to mention her who rarely went out, even an elven elder wouldn't be able to explain them. Meng Yingying took a bite of roasted meat. How can we establish ourselves in the forest? Is there a need to say? Of course it's to steal a city. Vivian said without even thinking. The forest of chaos has tens of thousands of cities, and most of these cities are built on the richest spiritual veins, the most resources, and the safest places. As long as we can steal a city, we can become a lord and develop our influence through managing the city. For a small village like this, there is a lot of mobility. It won't be able to grow. Meng Yingying found this very interesting. Then what are we waiting for? Can't we just directly steal it? Chu Tian rolled his eyes. If stealing a city was that easy, the forest of chaos would have already been unified by others. That's right, that's right. Vivian nodded in agreement. The forest of chaos is much larger than the southern summer country. Any random forest city would have quite a few true spirit cultivators guarding it. If we want to capture this city, the difficulty would not be lower than capturing the southern summer imperial city. Meng Yingying was secretly speechless. Any random city in the forest of chaos had this kind of shocking strength? With Miracle Commerce's current strength, they really couldn't steal it. Even if they did, they wouldn't be able to defend it. After all, in this chaotic area, the hundreds of races were very chaotic. Vivian said with a sigh, it's a pity that I'm not an adult yet, otherwise I could ask Royal Father to give me an elven city. Pooh! They almost spat out the food in their mouths. Chu Tian also looked at Vivian with a face of surprise. Although he knew that Vivian's status wasn't low, he never thought it would be this high. Could it be that her father really was the Elven King? But it seems like there's no hope now. I left the tribe to gain experience, and this matter has definitely been reported to the council. With this stain, the council will not approve it. Chapter 725. Miracle Commerce conducted several tests and collected a large amount of data. The final conclusion was that the space warehouse was very stable. Other than not being able to store life forms and pure energy objects, there were no other restrictions. The space warehouse would not damage the items stored, and it even had the effect of preventing them from rotting. Other than that, the space warehouse consumed a large amount of energy to maintain, and the amount of energy consumed was closely related to the items stored in the warehouse. An empty warehouse consumed the least amount of energy, and the more items stored, the more energy it consumed. This was related to the volume, quality, and energy of the items stored. If the volume was too large, the quality was too high, or the energy was too strong, the space warehouse's energy consumption would be very large. At that time, the 4 energy pillars would be drained before the space could be opened, causing the space warehouse to fail. Although energy wasn't valuable, building the energy pillars was quite troublesome. Therefore, in the process of opening the space warehouse, one had to carefully understand the situation of the warehouse to avoid unnecessary losses and troubles. Whether it was the space warehouse's structure or the space warehouse's encryption, the warehouse needed a large amount of time and energy to complete. This was not a small project, and to Miracle Commerce, who only had a single spatial engineer, it was not a small challenge. Vivian had no complaints about this, rather she felt very honored. Because this job was special and irreplaceable, she was filled with energy. The space warehouse was not only Vivian's first business, it was also a perfect work of art that was slowly being created in her hands. She wished she could use all her energy to make it perfect. Vivian worked overtime every day with Meng Qingguo and Meng Yingying helping her. The space warehouse's progress was not fast, but it was being pushed forward little by little. Only, Chu Tian had been coming to the spatial laboratory less and less recently. It was unknown what he was doing all day. Meng Qingguo asked around and found out that Chu Tian had brought Gu Qianqiu and a group of old men to do research on medicine. Meng Qingguo understood Chu Tian too well. This fellow wouldn't do anything unnecessary. Since he could produce this strange medicine, there had to be a reason. What was the use of this medicine? How could Miracle Commerce's general manager not know what was happening in Miracle Commerce? Meng Qingguo personally looked at the Yun sect's research records and was shocked to find that she had never heard of this medicine before. Large amounts of fierce beast blood and strange materials were used to refine a thing called the wild blood medicine. What was the use of this thing? It was definitely not a medicine to increase one's cultivation base, and it did not have any healing or detoxifying effects. Meng Qingguo couldn't help finding Chu Tian and slapping the documents on the table. The space laboratory has reached a critical point. It's fine if you don't help, but now you're researching this strange thing. Aren't you going to give me an explanation? Explanation? Why would I explain it to you? I am the boss of Miracle Commerce and you're acting like the boss's wife. Chu Tian calmly took a sip of tea. Before we enter the forest of chaos, what do you think is the most urgent problem to solve? This question stunned Meng Qingguo. The company had a bunch of problems that needed to be solved, so she didn't know which one was the most important. Meng Qingguo countered with a question, then what do you think it is? We lack a strong army of our own. Actually, Miracle Commerce's technology is already very advanced in the modern era. Chu Tian said this before pausing, but Miracle Commerce lacks a synchronized military force. Perhaps we didn't feel it in the southern summer country, but once we enter a place like the Forest of Chaos, this problem will be fatal. Meng Qingguo said with knit brows, don't we have source energy weapons? The source energy weapons also need humans to control them. Chu Tian explained his intentions, so, I'm prepared to create an army. Miracle Commerce's underworld mercenary group had 30,000 people. Actually, the underworld mercenary group's original intention was to protect Miracle Commerce's various businesses. Miracle Commerce's businesses were too wide, so they needed a certain amount of military force to guard them. Once the mercenary group was scattered, there wouldn't be much left. The giant shark gang had 100,000 members, but there were only 10-20,000 elites, so they couldn't effectively protect Miracle Commerce. As for the 200,000 Southern Summer Cavalry in their hands, this was the blood of the Southern Summer Country, and it was a pretty good army, but it didn't belong to Miracle Commerce. Not to mention the fact that cavalry couldn't be used in the Forest of Chaos. The Forest of Chaos was different from the Southern Summer Country. The Forest of Chaos was a truly chaotic land. If one didn't have a strong enough influence, what could they do even if they brought good goods into the Forest of Chaos? Perhaps before the company could even start operating, everything would be stolen. Meng Qinggu was a little interested. Then what are you prepared to do? At this time, Chu Tian's communication device rang. Meng Qinggu was a little surprised. Only the core members knew Chu Tian's number. If there wasn't a big matter, no one would call him. Everyone knew that Chu Tian was very lazy, so if something happened, he would look for Meng Qinggu. Nangong Yun's anxious voice came, Chu Tian, this is bad, we've been robbed by bandits. Where did these bandits come from to rob Miracle Commerce? Wasn't this nonsense? Even the Southern Summer King did not dare offend Miracle Commerce now. Chu Tian had a large army in his hands and was the #1 noble in the Southern Summer Country, so what was the difference between offending Miracle Commerce and committing suicide? Chu Tian did not say anything, but Meng Qinggu quickly asked, Nangong, what did you say? What is going on? I don't know either, it's just that a group of barbarians ran out of the mountains and attacked our engineering team. Nangong Yun quickly explained, those barbarian commanders aren't weak, they've captured elder sister Yun Yao and elder sister Kaidai. Before elder sister Kaidai was captured, she contacted me. I heard that there were heavy losses, so quickly come and save them. Southern State was the most primitive and barbaric region of the 8 states. Most of the barbarians came from the south and were very strong, making people fear them. Moreover, they were not civilized at all and would often kidnap caravans from cities. When the Western Marquis managed Southern State, he used a strategy of absorbing and resisting. He recruited the barbarians to increase his army's strength while using the Southern State army to suppress the barbarians, maintaining a balance in front of them. After Miracle Commerce came to Southern State, Meng Qinggu understood the local situation. Although she knew that the barbarians were not small, she did not place them in her eyes. She never would have thought that. How could this bunch of damned fellows be so blind? If we don't eradicate the barbarians, Southern State's development will be hindered. Meng Qinggu stood up and said, we have 200,000 storm cavalry, why don't we use this chance to wipe out the barbarians? The 200,000 storm cavalry was a strong army that could fight the warhounds. The Southern Summer Country had spent countless resources and energy to train them. These barbarians were the lowest of the low and each tribe only had a few thousand people. They could not stop the storm cavalry's charge. Damn, they're simply going too far. Chu Tian angrily slapped the table, Nangong, bring 500 Griffin Knights first. Even if you have to go door to door, you have to find out which barbarian tribe ate a bear's heart and leopard's gall, daring to rob my Miracle Commerce. I'll gather the army and I'll be there soon. If we don't teach these barbarians a lesson today, they won't know who the owner of this land is. All right. Nangong Yun hung up the call. Chu Tian's anger had not disappeared. He turned to the side and found that the young miss was looking at him with a strange gaze. Chu Tian was scared by the young miss' gaze. Young miss, why are you looking at me like this? Our people have been robbed, aren't you worried at all? The young miss gave a cold laugh. Your acting is quite good, I was almost tricked by you. Chu Tian pretended to be surprised. Why does the young miss say this? If my guesses aren't wrong, Miracle Commerce has not been robbed at all. It was all a show you directed, right? Young miss, you need evidence to speak. I'm such a pure and honest person, how could I direct this kind of dirty trick? Meng Qinggu stared at him, if Miracle Commerce had really been robbed, it would be strange if you weren't angry. Would you still be sitting here calmly talking nonsense with me? Also, you had Nangongyun go door to door to look for you. If someone was really captured and Nangongyun found a hostage, it would be strange if they didn't all die. The little fox's divine, I can clearly find the target, why didn't you use it? Why did you have to use this kind of stupid method? Others might not know Chu Tian's background, but how could Meng Qinggu not know? Chu Tian's little fox was not just for show, that divine eye could be considered a divine investigative tool. As long as it locked onto a general area, the little fox could easily find this group of reckless robbers. Nangongyun could have just brought the Griffin Knights over to save them, why did he have to go through all this trouble? There was only one possibility. This was definitely a good show directed by Chu Tian himself. Chu Tian helplessly said, "The young miss is truly a beautiful and intelligent girl, I can't fool you at all." It's not that you can't fool me. It's that your acting is too bad. But it's also good, he could use this chance to show off his muscles in Southern State. He would let the barbarians and the Southern State nobles see who the true boss of this territory was. Miracle Commerce had deliberately spread the news everywhere. Almost everyone in the city knew that Miracle Commerce had been attacked and 2 important members of the management had been captured by the barbarians. This matter was spread all over the city and everyone knew about it. After around 3 hours, the 200,000 soldiers neatly lined up. Every 10,000 people formed a large group, with a total of 20 groups. Chu Tian personally led this group, charging into the barbarians' territory. Meng Qinggu used her status as the Southern State Marquis to gather over 100,000 Southern State soldiers, following the storm cavalry. Because they had been robbed by a group of barbarians, Miracle Commerce had mobilized an elite army of several 100,000 people. This was unprecedented in the history of Southern State. The Southern State nobles wanted to see a joke, but when they saw the terrifying power in Miracle Commerce's hands, their faces all turned pale in fear. This was too terrifying. If anyone dared to provoke Miracle Commerce in the future, they would be instantly crushed into nothing. It was impossible for the barbarians not to know about this army of several 100,000. The entire barbarian race exploded as the tribe leaders gathered together in shock. Which bastard had provoked a giant like Miracle Commerce? It wasn't like the barbarians didn't know anything about Miracle Commerce. After all, Miracle Commerce's influence was too large and the barbarians were proud to use Miracle Commerce's electric lamp. Although they didn't know how strong Miracle Commerce was, they wouldn't provoke this kind of peak power for no reason. This is bad. This is the Southern Summer Country's strongest storm cavalry. Reporting to the chief, the humans have sent several 100,000 cavalry, we need to quickly escape. Damn it. Which tribe did this? Do they not have fucking eyes? Quickly find them and hand them over to the humans. Too late, the human army has already surrounded us. They want to use this as an excuse to capture our barbarians in one fell swoop. The barbarians were like ants on a hot pan. Chapter 726. So what if Vivian could come to a city? The elves were xenophobic, especially afraid of humans. They would not allow humans to live in the city and they would not allow humans to manage the city. Letting Chu Tian live in the elven city was a kind of restriction. The Forest of Chaos environment was different from the Southern Summer Country. If one didn't have a strong enough fist, they wouldn't be able to protect it no matter how many they had. This was also the reason why Chu Tian was not in a rush to find allies in the forest. In this chaotic and disorderly place, they would make a move if they wanted to. As long as there was profit to be made, there would be no reason at all. Honored guests. The Rabbit Race village chief walked over with a cane. He was a bit fearful, but he respectfully said, "You've taken back the spring water for the village, we are very grateful to you. Is there anything we can help you with?" The Rabbit Race was a kind of spirit beast, but they were a low-class spirit beast race. The spirit beasts were one of the most complex races on the continent. The humans had dwarves, barbarians, and giants, and the elves had forest elves, snow elves, flame elves, and etc. However, there had never been a race like the spirit beasts that had several hundred branches, with each branch being an independent species. This was truly incredible. The special characteristic of the spirit beasts was that the higher level the spirit beasts were, the more violent they were, and the lower level spirit beasts were, the more docile they were. The rabbit race was a race that did not like fighting because they were weak, so the rabbit race relied on higher level races to survive. There weren't many independent rabbit race villages like this, and once they were targeted by hunters or demon beasts from other races, they would immediately be exterminated. The rabbit race did not have anything, and their civilization was very backward. They didn't even understand source energy arrays, not to mention alchemy. The spring of life was the foundation of the rabbit race's survival. Chu Tian's group had helped them take back the spring of life from the demon beasts. This was a large favor to the rabbit race. The only thing the rabbit race was worried about was that they had other plans. If these people had bad intentions, this village would not be able to be kept. All the rabbit race members had to leave as soon as possible to avoid a disaster. We are just a few normal adventurers. We came to the Forest of Chaos this time to buy some materials. However, we are not familiar with the Forest of Chaos, so where can we buy materials from? We will need the village chief's advice. They didn't have enough strength, so being low-key wasn't a bad thing. Chu Tian had already thought of a goal in coming to the Forest of Chaos. He just wanted to find a suitable source for miracle commerce and supply them with high-level materials to satisfy the source energy weapons production. He would not participate in the chaotic battles of the Forest of Chaos for now. Stealing a city to build a gang? Forget it. With their current strength, any random tribe would be able to cripple miracle commerce. Haste makes waste. He would first create a berserker army. Around 100 miles from here, there is a small settlement. It is a temporary small town, and if the nearby villages need to exchange for supplies, they will all be done in this small town. The rabbit race village chief let out a sigh of relief. Although this small town isn't big, there are quite a few forest specialties. Even if you can't find anything Sir is satisfied with, it is quite convenient to obtain information there. A temporary small town. Chu Tian could understand this. The small races of the Forest of Chaos and even the medium-sized powers were all forced to follow the Dark Forest Law. So the Dark Forest Law was not hard to understand. It meant that in a dark forest, there were countless hunters. These hunters could all become each other's prey, so it was necessary to hide in this kind of environment. Once they were exposed, it was very risky. Not only would it attract the attacks of other hunters, it would also attract the attention of other giants. There would be the danger of being swallowed up or even being exterminated. Therefore, if the small and medium-sized races wanted to develop in the Forest of Chaos, they had to follow this law. Because they didn't dare expose themselves, how could they exchange for supplies from the outside world? This kind of temporary small town was a method. When the villages needed supplies, they would disguise themselves and come to the small town. After exchanging for what they needed, they would immediately leave this place, not daring to stay too long to avoid attracting the attention of others. Since they had obtained some information, they would set off. Sir, please wait. The rabbit race village chief could see that Chu Tian was the leader of this group. He gently clapped his hands and several well-developed rabbit race beauties came out. These rabbit race girls had all washed themselves and their watery eyes stared at Chu Tian. What is the meaning of this? These are the 10 most beautiful girls in the village and they are all virgins. They are now offered to Sir and will become Sir's personal maids. The rabbit race is gentle and warm, they will definitely serve Sir well. Fuck, it can't be. Chu Tian was a bit stunned. The rabbit race looked a bit strange. After all, they were not the same race as humans. However, from a human's point of view, the rabbit race girls were petite, full, and gentle. They were the best choice for maids. In the human world, a beautiful rabbit girl could be sold for a high price, not to mention a virgin. But Chu Tian could clearly feel that there was a sharp gaze staring at him. Even Chen Bingyu was silently looking at him and Vivian was frowning. How could he take this? Chu Tian righteously refused. How could I, Chu Tian, be a person who is greedy for beauty and tramples on others? I appreciate the village chief's good intentions, but I cannot accept this kind of gift. The rabbit race village chief said, no, this is their honor. I hope sir will not refuse. These words were not a lie as the rabbit race girls revealed looks of desire. They lived in the forest of chaos, living in precarious situations every day. If they were taken in as maids by an expert, it would be like flying up a branch and turning into a phoenix. Not to mention that this human was in line with the rabbit race's point of view, it was much better than those fierce-looking tigers and bears. From the perspective of the rabbit race, they could use this to monitor Chu Tian. If Chu Tian went back and spread the location of the rabbit race's village, these rabbit girls could run back and report, ensuring the safety of the village. In a place like the Forest of Chaos, they had to be careful. Village chief, don't force us. The small town is very dangerous, it isn't safe for us to bring the rabbit girls. Meng Yingying suddenly stood up and said, leave them here first and we'll take them when we have a chance. That's it. The rabbit race village chief saw that the other side didn't want them and his heart couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed. Was not being greedy for small benefits really noble, or was he preparing to be greedy for more? It really was hard to predict whether this was a blessing or a curse. The rabbit race village chief looked at Meng Yingying, Vivian, and Chen Bingyu for a few seconds, but this person had so many beauties by his side. Perhaps he really didn't like the commoners of the rabbit village, so he could only comfort himself like this. Chu Tian left the small village. Meng Yingying gave 2 coughs and said, the 10 beautiful maids are gone, are you disappointed? How could that be? Am I, Chu Tian, this kind of person? I am a free love advocate, this kind of transaction needs the location of the sword art. Who knows what you're thinking? Meng Yingying rolled her eyes. She looked at the rabbit village covered in a weak flame and sighed, but these rabbit people are quite pitiful. They are clearly so weak, but they have to live in such a dangerous environment. Perhaps they will be discovered or destroyed sooner or later. But it's really strange. The Forest of Chaos is clearly rich in resources, so why are they fighting each other? The Forest of Chaos has always been like this, it's either you destroy me or I destroy you. Vivian was already used to it, it's hard for small tribes and small powers to survive. As long as they are targeted by a stronger power, they will be attacked for no reason at all. Meng Yingying said to Chu Tian, hey, since this place is this chaotic, why don't you just unify it and let these weak races survive? Damn, look at your tone, it's like it's easy. Not to mention the others, what do we do with the Dragon Lord? The weapons that Chu Tian could make now wouldn't even be able to harm a single one of his scales. Not to mention the Elven King, Titan, Beast King, and Sea King, all these powerful existences. But Chu Tian was not a cowardly person. He immediately patted his chest and said, since it's Yingying's orders, I'll do my best to complete it. Meng Yingying revealed a sweet smile, feeling very satisfied in her heart. Since Chu Tian said this, there was definitely no problem. There was nothing in this world that he couldn't do. Vivian was very envious of Yingying and Chu Tian's relationship. Chu Tian was the person she admired the most. When the 5 of them set out, it was already midnight. Traveling through the forest at night was a big taboo because most demon beasts wanted to roam at night. However, Chu Tian was very bold and he did not think that there would be anything that could threaten him in the Forest of Chaos. The Lost Forest was filled with large amounts of fireflies, sunlight vines, glowing grass, fluorescent mushrooms, and etc. They automatically emitted light at night. Although it wasn't bright, it wasn't to the point where one couldn't see their fingers in front of them. Of course, not all things that emitted light were good. There were some demons and monsters that emitted beautiful lights and illusions to confuse people's hearts, finally luring their prey into a trap. This was a beautiful and magical scene, but there were dangers lurking everywhere. The sounds of insects were gloomy and there were demon beast roars coming from unknown places. The 5 of them didn't stop for a second. Although they were attacked several times along the way, they passed through without any danger. They finally arrived at their destination in the early morning. The morning glow fell into the forest like a flame and the pale golden sun covered the small town of Sardo, quietly standing in the small valley in the dense forest. If it wasn't for the rabbit race's village chief's reminder, even if they passed by, they wouldn't know that there was a small town like this. It was hidden very well and covered in green vines, almost merging with the forest. Sardo meant forest house in the spirit beast language, so most of the people in this small town were spirit beasts. The small town had no guards or a mayor. In this place where laws were worse than dog shit, strength was everything. Whoever had the hardest fist could do whatever they wanted. What made Chu Tian very surprised was that although it was small, it had everything. There were only a few thousand people in the small town, there were taverns, grocery stores, and all kinds of shops, but those that could live here were not easy to deal with. For example, the owner of the Alchemist Hall, he was a fugitive from the Great Zhou country. This person was proficient in alchemy and had refined poison to kill 300 enemies. He escaped from the Great Zhou country to the Forest of Chaos and lived in this small town, becoming one of the few humans here. He had been doing very well these past few years. Because alchemists were very rare here, when the important people in the village were sick, they needed to find him to treat them. Therefore, in just a few short years, this fellow had recruited many female apprentices and they were all high-quality goods. The female apprentices only learned some simple knowledge of herbs. They could help in the day and they could be used at night. If a customer liked them, of course they were welcome to use them. Only there would be a special service charge when the medical fees were paid, sometimes even more than their regular income. These girls did not have any personal property and they had to endure being trampled and tortured all day, but they were very satisfied with their master and their current life. If it wasn't for their master having a bit of status, how could they work together and live safely? After all, the lives of slaves were no different than insects. Strong alcohol, tobacco, hallucinogens, slaves, violence, and flesh. This small town was a small miniature of the Forest of Chaos, but it represented the majority of the Forest of Chaos. Chapter 727. Chu Tian's vast army moved out and the barbarians were completely scared silly. They could bully the Western Marquis, how could they dare to provoke the country-guarding ruler who had such a large army? The northern warhounds had tens of millions of people, but the southern state barbarians did not even have 1 million people. This small population was divided into several large and small tribes. The country-guarding ruler was not afraid of the warhounds, so how could he be afraid of the southern barbarians? So what if the barbarian warriors were strong and had thick skin? The warhounds' army of 600,000 had been completely annihilated by Chu Tian. Actually, the barbarians were afraid of offending the country-guarding ruler and bringing about the extermination of their tribe, so when they learned that Chu Tian had come to southern state, they began to restrain themselves. They quickly prepared rations and prepared to leave the southern state area. Although the barbarians were not smart, they were not fools. Who would want an uncontrollable power to appear in their territory? The Western Marquis had no way of dealing with them before, but the country-guarding ruler had the ability to eliminate them. If they waited for Chu Tian to make a move, it would be too late. Perhaps Miracle Commerce felt that the barbarians had restrained themselves and were preparing to leave, so they had been peaceful for half a month. Meng Qinggu did not plan on making a move against the barbarians. Who would have thought that at this moment, it was unknown which group of idiots would not be able to hold back and go out to eat. It was fine if you said they were robbing a normal merchant caravan. The barbarians had done this in the dark and it was fine as long as they did not go too far. Who would have thought that this group of idiots would attack Miracle Commerce's communication team? It was fine if you said you robbed them, but you killed Miracle Commerce's employees and even kidnapped 2 of Miracle Commerce's high management members. Wasn't this seeking death? It's over this time, they're dead for sure. An old barbarian tribe chief quickly discussed countermeasures with his tribe members. An old barbarian covered in bone ornaments stood up and said, "This is just a fuse. The southern summer people will not tolerate the barbarians. Nothing happened today, but something will happen tomorrow. The humans will destroy us sooner or later. Even if they don't make a move, we won't dare rob them. Without a source of income, we will starve to death. That's right. We can't stay in the southern summer country anymore. We have to quickly run." The barbarians did not know how to farm and were very barbaric. The humans disdained to be with them, so they could only rely on robbing to survive. Now that the southern state environment was deteriorating, the barbarians did not dare rob them anymore. How could they guarantee their future? The barbarians had lived in southern state for many years and had a deep grudge with the southern state people. From the perspective of the humans, they would not allow a foreign race that could threaten them to reproduce in their country. Even if this matter did not happen, there would be a day when the humans would make a move against the barbarians, so retreating was the only way. The old tribe chief nodded. "How are the preparations?" "We've prepared enough these days. As long as the old tribe chief gives the order, we'll hide in the forest. No matter how strong that country-guarding ruler Chu Tian is, he can't chase us into the forest." The old tribe chief nodded. It seemed like this was the only way. Outside of southern state, although the living conditions were a bit hard, they could still reproduce. It was better than staying in southern state and waiting for death. This is bad. This is bad. Chu Tian has led an army of several 100,000 to surround all four sides, trapping all the tribes. Chu Tian has given the order that before the hostages are saved, any tribe that dares to move will be exterminated. The old tribe chief was shocked. The southern summer country's army surrounded the barbarians' living area this quickly? Now that they couldn't run even if they wanted to, what should they do? In the end, only a few minutes had passed. This is bad. The humans are killing their way over. Clansmen, go all out with them. When these old barbarians heard the shouts from outside, they all turned pale with fear and quickly ran out. A red-haired girl riding a griffin was flying over with several hundred griffin riders. All the young barbarians in the tribe picked up their javelins and charged at this flying army. "Stop! Quickly stop!" The old tribe chief's eyes almost popped out. These young people that didn't know life from death, did they know what army this was? This was the southern summer country's trump card, the Griffin Riders. This was a special force used to protect the royal family. Whether it was the riders or the mounts, they were all in the awakened soul realm. Don't think that the other side didn't have many people. These several hundred Griffin riders were enough to destroy a barbarian tribe of several thousand people. Too late. These young-blooded barbarians were all like newborn calves that were not afraid of tigers. When they saw the Griffin riders approach, they immediately threw their javelins. How could this level of attack injure the Griffin riders? The Griffin riders easily shot down the javelins that were thrown at them. Good. You barbarians. You actually dared to sneak attack the southern summer army? It seems like you'll be the ones to attack my caravan. Nangong Yun was filled with rage as her red hair danced in the air. She pulled out an exaggerated storm rifle and angrily shouted with a fierce expression, "If I don't give you a taste, you won't know how strong I, Nangong Yun, am." This was the legendary source energy weapon. The old tribe chief had only heard of it, but he had never seen it before. Nangong Yun did not give the barbarians a chance to explain as she raised the storm rifle and spat out an angry flame. Large amounts of source energy bullets wildly rained down on the barbarian tribe. The barbarians that were preparing to throw their javelins had never seen such a terrifying weapon before, so they all ran away while crying out in pain. Too terrifying. This was simply a demon's weapon. Nangong Yun's storm rifle shot out several hundred source energy bullets in less than half a minute. That wild storm of bullets made every barbarian feel like their liver was being torn apart. Who would have thought that this was just the beginning? Nangongyun loudly shouted, "Everyone open fire. Let these bumpkins see Miracle Commerce's strength." The several hundred Griffin Knights put away their spears and each Griffin Knight took out a source energy submachine gun. With several hundred source energy guns firing at the same time, what kind of scene was this? The barbarians could be considered to have experienced the power of technology. In an instant, the rain of bullets fell down like a waterfall. The stone houses of the barbarian tribe were destroyed, the tents were riddled with holes, and the ground was filled with holes. Who told you to go against Miracle Commerce? Who told you to steal our people? Who told you to go against the Southern Summer Army? Nangongyun took out a hand grenade and threw it into the barbarian food warehouse. With a terrifying explosion, large amounts of flames soared into the sky and the entire warehouse was razed to the ground. A portion of the Griffin Knights took out hand grenades and threw them into the barbarian buildings. Red energy mushroom clouds popped up one after another like mushrooms. The old tribe chief and the group of old barbarians were all stunned. The houses were gone, the land was gone, and the food was gone. Nangongyun led the Griffin army to wreak havoc for an entire 5 minutes. The barbarians could not resist at all and the entire tribe was completely destroyed. The only strange thing was that the tribe suffered heavy losses, but the barbarians did not suffer any casualties. "Spare us." The old tribe chief was filled with fear and worry. He brought the barbarians to kneel down, "It really wasn't done by us." In the entire ambush, the Griffin Knights did not show any martial strength at all. They only used the source energy weapons to achieve this kind of terrifying effect. Even the most rebellious barbarian warriors would be shocked by this scene that they had never seen before. They would be branded in their hearts as Miracle Commerce's invincibility. The large barbarian men were all scared out of their wits. They all knelt down with the tribe chief and begged for mercy. Nangongyun walked over with the burning storm rifle. She waved her left hand and loudly shouted, "Search for me." The Griffin Knights split up to search and also caused some destruction. Finally the entire tribe was in a mess, but they did not find anyone from Miracle Commerce. Nangongyun who asked, "It really wasn't done by you?" The barbarians bitterly complained. It really was a misunderstanding, how could they do this kind of thing? "Fuck, since it wasn't done by you, why are you resisting?" Nangongyun slapped the old tribe chief to the ground. Her eyes were filled with flames as she angrily shouted, "Do you know how much time you've wasted for us? If it wasn't because of you, Miracle Commerce would have buried you with us. Come, let's go to the next tribe." Nangongyun led the Griffin Knights away. The old chief stood up and looked at the smoking tribe with a despondent look on his face. This Miracle Commerce is not human, they are demons." "That's right. Only demons have this kind of weapon. Even if we had 100 times more people, we still wouldn't be able to resist them. Quickly run." The old tribe chief looked at these people and shouted, "Run? Run my ass. We don't have weapons, we don't have food, we don't have a tribe, there's nothing left. We are surrounded by the Southern Summer Army, how can we run? Then what do we do? Even if we aren't killed by the demons, we will still starve to death." "That's right, they haven't saved the hostages yet, perhaps they have already been killed. That terrifying woman just said that if anything happened to the hostages, all the barbarians would be buried with them." The barbarians were filled with panic. This disaster had destroyed their homes and they had no weapons or food, so it was impossible for them to travel to the forest. But staying here was also a road to death, so what should they do? "How about we surrender?" Surrender? The old tribe chief had never thought of this problem before, but after carefully thinking about it, there was no other choice. They couldn't escape, so if they wanted to keep their lives, there was only one way. That was to surrender to Miracle Commerce and help them find the culprit and cut him into 10,000 pieces. Perhaps if Chu Tian was in a good mood, he would spare their lives. Although the barbarians did not have any skills, they were all very strong. Even 3-5 humans of the same level added together wouldn't be as strong as a single barbarian, so they should have some value as laborers. That's right. We surrender. Help Chu Tian find the culprit. After seeing Miracle Commerce's strength, the old tribe chief did not have any thoughts of resisting and immediately made the decision to surrender to Miracle Commerce. No matter what the result was, it wouldn't be worse than now. If their luck was good, they could still keep their lives. After all, this matter was not done by them, so Miracle Commerce had no reason to vent their anger on an army that surrendered to them in order to keep their lives. It wasn't just a tribe that did this. In just a short day, all the barbarians in the barbarian region had no home to return to. They were cursing the scum of their tribe for not having eyes and attacking Miracle Commerce, while they put down their weapons and begged for shelter with tears streaming down their faces. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.